The aroma of roasted turkey and lingering judgment filled my parents' dining room. Through the large bay windows, snow was beginning to fall on their perfectly manicured lawn in Greenwich, Connecticut, a stark contrast to my grandfather's worthless land in West Texas that had become the latest source of family tension. I'm Catherine Morgan, though my family insists on calling me Kate, their way of diminishing everything about me, right down to my name. At 31, I'm the youngest of 3 children and the only one who saw value in the 500 acres of seemingly barren desert land my grandfather left me in his will 6 months ago. Kate, my brother Thomas said, cutting into his organic free-range turkey, be reasonable. That land hasn't produced anything but tumbleweeds for 3 generations. His wife Victoria nodded in agreement, her designer bracelet catching the light from the crystal chandelier above. My sister Elizabeth chimed in from across the table. Even Grandpa called it his biggest mistake. You're just being stubborn. I took a small sip of water, letting their words wash over me like they had for the past 6 months. They had no idea about the geological surveys I'd commissioned or the quiet meetings I'd been having with Titan Energy's exploration team. Sometimes the best strategy is simply waiting for the right moment. The property taxes alone are draining your savings, my father, William Morgan, added. He'd been a successful investment banker before retiring and never missed an opportunity to remind us about financial responsibility. A quick sale would at least give you something to invest properly. My mother dabbed her lips with a linen napkin. Darling, we're just worried about you. First you leave your position at Goldman Sachs to find yourself. And now you're clinging to this worthless piece of desert. I had to bite back a smile. My time finding myself had actually been spent studying geological surveys, oil extraction technologies, and mineral rights law. The small apartment I'd moved into wasn't because I couldn't afford better. It was because every spare dollar went into research and preparation. We have a buyer lined up, Thomas continued, pulling out a folder from his briefcase. One of my real estate investment group clients. They'll take it off your hands for $175,000. That's generous considering the location. Generous. If they only knew about the preliminary soil samples, or the mineral rights analysis, or the fact that I'd already turned down 3 quiet offers from smaller energy companies. But Titan Energy's chief geologist had confirmed what I'd suspected. The land sat on what could be one of the largest untapped oil reserves in West Texas. The papers are ready. Thomas slid the folder across the table. Just sign, and you can put this whole thing behind you. You know, Thomas, I said carefully, it's interesting that you're so concerned about my financial well-being now. Where was this concern when you tried to contest Grandpa's will? The room went silent. My brother's face flushed. 6 months ago, he'd hired a team of lawyers trying to prove Grandpa wasn't of sound mind when he left me the land instead of splitting it between all 3 grandchildren. That's ancient history, Elizabeth cut in quickly. We're talking about your future, Kate. My future. I stood up slowly, straightening my simple black dress. Bought off the rack at a department store, much to my mother's horror. That's exactly what I'm thinking about. Just then my phone buzzed. A text from Marcus, my contact at Titan Energy. Board approved the offer. Paperwork coming tomorrow morning. Congratulations. I smiled, gathering my things. I should go. Early meeting tomorrow. Kate, my father's voice carried that familiar note of disapproval. Don't walk away from this opportunity. That land has been nothing but a burden on this family for 3 generations. Actually, I paused at the door. Grandpa told me something interesting before he died. He said sometimes the best investments are the ones nobody else sees value in. Kind of like that little tech startup you advised him not to invest in back in '98. What was it called again? Oh, right, Amazon. I left them sitting there, surrounded by their certainty and judgment. Tomorrow morning, Titan Energy's offer would hit the news, and their world would shift on its axis. Sometimes the sweetest victory is the one you never saw coming. As I drove home through the snowy streets, I thought about my grandfather's last words to me. "Catherine," he'd said, his voice weak, but his eyes sharp as ever, "that land isn't just dirt and rocks. It's a test. A test to see who in this family has the patience to look deeper, to think longer, to stand firm when everyone else says sell." I pulled into my parking spot at my modest apartment building, the same building my family thought I lived in because I couldn't afford better. They had no idea I owned the entire complex through a holding company, one of several quiet investments I'd made while they thought I was floundering. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Marcus. Press release scheduled for 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Board wants to meet you in person next week. I smiled, thinking about tomorrow's family breakfast. Another Morgan family tradition where they try once more to convince me to sign away my inheritance. Little did they know, in less than 24 hours, that worthless desert land would be worth more than everything else the family owned combined. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving people wrong. It's letting them discover just how wrong they were all by themselves. The next morning dawned crisp and cold, sunlight glinting off fresh snow as I parked my Civic outside my parents' Tudor-style mansion. Another family breakfast, another chance for them to question my judgment. Only today would be different. 8:47 a.m. 13 minutes until Titan Energy's press release. My mother opened the door before I could knock, perfect as always in her channel suit. "Kate, darling, you're late." I checked my watch. Actually 3 minutes early, but being late was their way of maintaining control. The breakfast room smelled of coffee and condescension. Thomas and Victoria were already seated, his laptop open beside his plate. Elizabeth was typing furiously on her phone, probably updating her Instagram about another charity gala. I took the liberty of having the papers drafted properly, Thomas said, sliding a thick folder across the table. "All you need to do is sign." I poured myself a coffee, noting the time. 8:52 a.m. "Kate," my father began, using his boardroom voice, "you need to think about your future. That land has been draining resources from this family since your grandfather bought it in '75. "Actually," I said, taking a small sip of coffee, "I've been thinking a lot about the future. About legacy, investment, patience." "Patience doesn't pay property taxes," Elizabeth snorted. 8:56 a.m. "Speaking of payments," Thomas continued, "my client is willing to handle all the transfer fees. You'll walk away with a clean $175,000. Victoria chimed in, "That's enough for a down payment on a proper apartment, at least." 8:58 a.m. "You know what Grandpa told me about that land?" I set down my coffee cup carefully. He said sometimes the biggest opportunities come disguised as mistakes. "Your grandfather was a dreamer," my father said dismissively. "That's why he died with only that worthless plot to his name." 9:00 a.m. Right on cue, Thomas's laptop pinged with a news alert. His face went from smugged to confused to pale in the span of 3 seconds. This must be a mistake," he stammered. "What is it?" my mother demanded. Thomas turned the laptop around, his hands shaking slightly. The headline blazed across the screen. "Titan Energy, ANNOUNCES, $50 million APUISIT of PURINTEXAS oil field. Largest INTEPEDU RESERV discovered in last decade. Elizabeth's phone clattered to the floor. Victoria's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. The Morgan family plot. Thomas read aloud, his voice cracking, estimated to contain over 300 million barrels of recoverable oil. Preliminary agreements signed with current owner Catherine Morgan. $50 million, my father whispered. Cash offer, I confirmed. Plus 5% of gross production royalties for the next 30 years. Estimated value of the total package. I paused, enjoying the moment. Just over $2 billion. The silence that followed was absolute. But you said you were struggling, my mother finally managed. No, I corrected gently. You said I was struggling. I said I was being patient. My phone buzzed. Marcus again. Board wants to move up the meeting. Private jet standing by at Teterboro. You knew, Thomas accused, his face reddening. You knew all along there was oil. I suspected. Then I researched. Then I confirmed. Then I negotiated. I stood up, smoothing my department store dress. You know, Thomas, it's interesting. If your legal challenge to Grandpa's will had succeeded, you'd be worth about $700 million right now. Elizabeth made a choking sound. The meeting, my father started, shifting instantly into business mode. You'll need representation. I can call Harrison at J.P. Morgan. Actually, I cut him off. I've been working with Goldman's energy team for the past 4 months. You remember Goldman Sachs? Where I was wasting my potential before I left. My mother's hand flew to her throat. Catherine, darling, we should discuss this as a family. We are discussing it, I replied. I'm informing you that the deal is done. The papers are signed. And that worthless land you've been mocking for 6 months. It just made me one of the richest women in Texas. I gathered my things, pausing at the door. Oh, and Thomas, you can keep your $175,000 offer. I'll be busy setting up a proper energy investment portfolio. As I walked to my car, I could hear the chaos erupting behind me. Elizabeth was crying. Thomas was shouting about legal reviews. My mother was calling someone about an emergency family meeting. But I had a plane to catch and an empire to build. Sometimes the best success isn't just proving people wrong. It's showing them exactly how right you've been all along. My phone buzzed one more time. A message from an unknown number. Your grandfather would be proud. Martha. Martha. Grandpa's old secretary, the one who'd slipped me the initial geological surveys 6 months ago, the one person who'd known what that land really meant. I smiled, starting my car. The day was just beginning, and I had a board meeting to prepare for. After all, $2 billion is just the starting point when you know exactly what you're doing. 3 months after Titan Energy's announcement shook my family's world, I sat in my new office on the 47th floor of a downtown Manhattan skyscraper. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city where I was quietly building something far bigger than just an oil fortune. My phone buzzed. Another message from Thomas. The 5th this week. Katie, we need to discuss the family investment opportunity. Dad's put together a comprehensive proposal. I added it to the growing folder of desperate attempts at reconciliation and control. The past 3 months had been a masterclass in watching people scramble to rewrite history. My assistant Julia appeared in the doorway. Your mother's in the lobby again. 3rd time this week. The usual response. Ms. Morgan is in meetings. Would you like to schedule an appointment through proper channels? Julia smiled. She left another envelope with the receptionist. I knew what it contained without opening it. Another invitation to a family dinner, probably at Le Bernardin or Daniel. Somewhere suitably expensive to show they now saw me as an equal. As if money was what made someone worthy of respect. Also, Julia continued, the Goldman Sachs team is ready for you. They're excited about the new energy fund. I smiled, remembering how my father had tried to get his old contacts at Goldman to help him advise me. What he didn't know was that I'd already been working with their top energy investment team to launch a $5 billion clean energy transition fund. Send them in. As I stood to greet the Goldman team, I caught my reflection in the window. No more department store clothes. Today, I wore a perfectly tailored Armani suit, not to impress anyone, but because I chose it. Success hadn't changed me. It had just given me the freedom to be exactly who I was. The meeting went brilliantly. By the time they left, we had the framework for what would become the largest private clean energy investment fund in North America. My grandfather's worthless land wasn't just making me rich, it was helping me reshape the entire energy sector. Later that afternoon, Elizabeth showed up unannounced. Security called. Julia informed me. She's insisting it's a family emergency. Let her up, I said after a moment. But stay close. Elizabeth burst in, designer handbag clutched like a shield. Katie, you have to help. James is in trouble. James, her husband who'd laughed the loudest at Thanksgiving about my desert dirt. The hedge fund is collapsing, she continued. We need a capital injection. Just 10 million. You won't even notice it's gone. I studied my sister carefully. Did Dad send you? She flushed. He thought he might be more receptive to family. Family, I repeated softly. Like when you and Thomas tried to have Grandpa declared mentally incompetent after the will reading? That was Thomas's idea. I just went along with it, like you always do. I stood up, walking to the window. Tell me something, Elizabeth. Did you ever ask yourself why Grandpa left me that land? She was quiet for a moment. Because you were his favorite? No, because I was the only one who ever asked him about it. The only one who sat with him for hours while he talked about geology and mineral rights and patient investment. Everyone else was too busy waiting for him to die so they could sell it. Katie, please. It's Catherine, I corrected. And I'm not giving James money to bail out his bad investments. But I will give you some advice. The same advice Grandpa gave me. Look deeper. Think longer. Stand firmer. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'll have my team review James's fund. If there's something worth salvaging, we'll discuss terms. Real terms, not family favors. After she left, Julia brought in the latest financial reports. Titan's production numbers are exceeding projections. The royalty payments alone this quarter will be. Double them and send them to Martha, I interrupted. Anonymous donation to her grandchildren's college fund. Julia smiled. Already done. My phone buzzed again. A message from Thomas's wife, Victoria. We need to talk privately. About Thomas's gambling debts. I added it to the folder. The family secrets were tumbling out now. One desperate plea at a time. That evening, as I was preparing to leave, my father made one last attempt. A text message. The family name means something in this city. We should be working together, not apart. I looked out at the darkening skyline, at the city where I was building my own legacy. You're right, I typed back. The Morgan name does mean something. That's why I'm launching my projects under my full name, Catherine Elizabeth Morgan, so everyone knows exactly which Morgan is changing the energy industry. I gathered my things, heading for the private elevator. Tomorrow I had meetings with solar technology developers, wind farm operators, and 3 major investment banks. The oil money from that worthless land was just the beginning. My phone buzzed one final time. A photo from Martha, my grandfather's old desk nameplate, the one that had sat in his study for 40 years. Found this in storage, her message read. He always said it would look better on your desk. I smiled, thinking about that old wooden desk plate with its simple inscription. Look deeper. And I had. Past the family doubts, past the surface assumptions, past the easy answers. $2 billion hadn't just bought me freedom from their expectations. It had bought me the power to build something they never imagined possible. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't in proving people wrong. It's in proving yourself right in ways they never saw coming. 3 years later, the Catherine Morgan Clean Energy Fund would be worth $50 billion, making my original oil fortune look like pocket change. The worthless land that my family had mocked had become the foundation of an empire that would help transition the world away from fossil fuels altogether. And that, as my grandfather would say, was worth more than all the oil in Texas. Because sometimes the best investment isn't in what people can see. It's in what they're too blind to notice. And sometimes the greatest legacy isn't what you inherit, but what you build from it.
The pantry door clicked shut behind me, and I heard the lock turn. "Oops, sorry, Harper," Malia's voice carried through the woods, sickeningly sweet. "The door must have stuck. We'll get you out in just a minute." My name is Harper, and I should have known this wasn't an accident. Nothing in my family ever is. I pressed my ear to the door, my heart hammering as voices drifted from the kitchen. Ethan's birthday party was in full swing outside. 10 years old today, my baby boy, but here I was, trapped like some unwanted relative they'd rather forget, which, let's be honest, is exactly what I am. Is she gone? That was my mother's voice, sharp and calculating as always. "Locked away safely," Malia replied. "God, did you see how she was hovering around Ethan during cake time? It's getting worse. She's becoming unstable again." Mum's tone made my blood freeze, just like before. Before, when I was 19 and pregnant, and they convinced me I was too young, too broken, too everything to raise my own son. "Ryan thinks we're being too harsh," Malia said, and I could picture her dismissive wave. "But he doesn't understand. She's confusing Ethan. Yesterday he asked me why Aunt Harper looks sad when she watches him play." My chest tightened. Even at 10, Ethan was too perceptive for his own good. "We need to discuss the long-term solution," Mum said, her voice dropping to that conspiratorial whisper I knew too well. "She can't keep showing up to every birthday, every school play. It's not healthy for anyone." "Especially not for Ethan," Malia agreed. "He's starting to ask questions about why Harper never has her own kids, why she lives alone, why she gets that look." "What look?" Dad's voice joined the conversation, and I heard a chair scrape. "You know the look, Arthur, like she's mourning something. It makes everyone uncomfortable." I bit my lips so hard I tasted blood. The mourning look. Because I was mourning every single day for the past 10 years, I'd been mourning the life I gave up, the choice that wasn't really a choice at all. "The adoption papers are ironclad," Dad said firmly. "She signed them willingly." Willingly. Right. Like a 19-year-old girl with no money, no support, and parents threatening to disown her had any real choice. "Still," Mum continued, "we should consider asking her to step back. For everyone's sake. Maybe suggest she take that job opportunity in Portland she mentioned?" My stomach dropped. I'd mentioned Portland exactly once, months ago, as a hypothetical. trust my mother to weaponize casual conversation. She'll resist, Malia said. You know how she gets when it comes to Ethan. Possessive. Possessive. The word hit like a slap. I was possessive of my own biological son, the child I carried for 9 months, the baby I held for exactly 3 hours before they convinced me to sign him away. Then we make it clear she doesn't have a choice, Mum said, her voice turning steel cold. Harper has always been dramatic, but she's not stupid. She'll understand what's best for Ethan. What if she doesn't? Dad asked. A long pause. Then Malia spoke, and her words made my knees buckle. Then we tell Ethan the truth about his birth mother, how unstable she was, how she abandoned him because she couldn't handle responsibility, how we saved him from a life of chaos and disappointment. The truth, their version of it anyway, the version where I was the villain in my own story. He's old enough to understand now, Mom added. Sometimes children need to know why certain people can't be trusted with their well-being. I slid down the pantry door until I was sitting on the floor, surrounded by birthday party supplies and the scent of vanilla cake. Outside, I could hear Ethan laughing with his friends, completely unaware that the adults in his life were planning to erase me from his world entirely. But here's the thing about being underestimated your whole life. People forget you're capable of fighting back. The lock clicked and Malia's face appeared in the doorway, all fake concern and practiced sympathy. There you are. Sorry about that. The door gets stuck sometimes. Are you okay? You look pale. I stood up slowly, brushing dust off my jeans, and gave her my brightest smile. I'm perfect, I said. Just perfect. Because after 10 years of playing the grateful little sister, the understanding birth mother, the family disappointment, I was finally ready to stop playing nice. I made it through exactly 20 minutes of fake smiles and how's work, Harper? Small talk before I needed air. The backyard was packed with kids running around, parents clustered in their perfect little groups, and my family playing their roles like seasoned actors. I slipped around the side of the house, pulling out my phone to text Kimberly when I heard Dad's voice through the open window of his study. Come here, Ethan. I want to talk to you about something important. I froze. The window was cracked just enough that I could hear everything. Am I in trouble, Grandpa? No, son, but you're getting older now, and there are some things you should understand about your family. My heart started racing. I pressed myself against the brick wall, hidden by the overgrown rose bushes Mum never bothered to trim. It's about your Aunt Harper, Dad continued, and I felt like I was going to throw up. What about her? Well, you know how sometimes she seems different? Sad, maybe? A little too interested in everything you do? I guess. She always asks lots of questions about school and stuff. That's because she has some problems, Ethan. Mental problems. She's not quite right in the head. The words hit me like physical blows. I gripped my phone so tight I thought it might crack. What kind of problems? Ethan's voice was smaller now, confused. She gets obsessed with things, with people. When she was younger, she made some very bad choices because she couldn't think clearly. Malia's voice joined the conversation. That's why she doesn't have her own family, sweetheart. She's not capable of taking care of anyone. But she takes care of herself, Ethan said, and I wanted to cry at how he tried to defend me. Barely, Dad replied. She lives in that tiny apartment, works at that little job, never married, never had children. That's not normal for someone her age. Your grandfather's right, Malia said gently. Harper has always been unstable. Even when we were kids, she'd have these episodes where she'd get fixated on things that weren't hers. What do you mean? Well, Malia's voice took on that patient, explaining to a child tone. Sometimes she pretends things belong to her when they don't. Sometimes she even believes her own stories. My vision blurred with rage. They were rewriting history, making me sound delusional. Like what? Ethan asked. A pause. Then Dad spoke carefully. Sometimes she talks about you like you're her son instead of your mum's. That's weird. It is weird, honey, Malia agreed. And it's not fair to you. You shouldn't have to deal with an adult who can't accept reality. Is that why she looks at me funny sometimes? What do you mean? Dad asked. Like she's going to cry. And she always wants to hug me goodbye, even when other people are watching. That's exactly what we're talking about, Malia said. She doesn't understand appropriate boundaries. It makes everyone uncomfortable. Should I not hug her back? My heart shattered into a million pieces. My 10-year-old son was asking permission to show me basic affection. You should be polite, Dad said, but you don't have to do anything that makes you uncomfortable. And if she ever says anything strange to you, anything about being your real mother or loving you more than Mom and Dad do, you need to tell us immediately. Would she say that? She might, Malia said sadly. People with her condition sometimes can't help themselves. They create fantasies and try to make other people believe them. That's scary. It's not scary if you know what to look for, Dad assured him. Just remember, your real family is the people who've raised you, loved you, and taken care of you every single day, not someone who shows up for parties and pretends to care. Pretends to care. I bit my lips so hard I drew blood. Okay, Grandpa, can I go back to my party now? Of course. And Ethan, this conversation stays between us, all right? We don't want to hurt Aunt Harper's feelings by letting her know we're worried about her. I won't tell. Footsteps moved away from the window. I stayed frozen against the wall, shaking with fury and heartbreak. My phone buzzed. A text from Kimberly. How's the party? Everything okay? I typed back with trembling fingers. They're poisoning him against me. It's time. Her response came immediately. Are you sure? Once we do this, there's no going back. I looked through the window at the empty study, then toward the backyard, where my son was probably already seeing me differently, already questioning every interaction we'd ever had. I'm sure. Call Raphael. Tell him it's happening tonight. Because if they wanted to play dirty, I had news for them. I'd been preparing for this war longer than they knew. I ducked into the guest bathroom and called Kimberly, my hands still shaking. Harper, what happened? They're telling him I'm mentally unstable, that I'm obsessed with him, that I make up stories about being his mother. Jesus. Okay, breathe. Are you recording any of this? No, I should have been. Kim, they're going to cut me out completely. I heard them planning it. Then we move tonight. Raphael's been ready for weeks. Do you still have the original documents? In my car, hidden in the spare tyre compartment like you said. Good. Can you get through the rest of the party without losing it? I stared at myself in the mirror. My face was blotchy, my eyes red. I don't know. You have to. We need them relaxed, unsuspecting. Can you do that? Yeah, I can do that. I'm calling Raphael now. He'll be there within the hour. I splashed cold water on my face and headed back outside. The party was winding down. Some families had already left, and the remaining kids were running around in that sugar crash way that meant parents would start gathering their things soon. Ethan was by the swing set with 2 friends, but when he saw me approaching, he went quiet. The change was subtle but devastating. Yesterday, he would have run over to tell me about his presence. Today, he just watched me with careful eyes. Having fun, birthday boy? I asked, forcing my voice to stay light. Yeah. He didn't move from where he stood. Your cake was amazing. Did you make a good wish? He shrugged. I guess. One of his friends tugged on his sleeve. Come on, Ethan, let's go see if there's more cake. They ran off without another word. I stood there watching my son avoid me, and it took everything I had not to scream. Harper, there you are. Mum appeared beside me, her smile sharp as glass. We need to talk. About what? Your future. Come inside. She didn't wait for an answer, just turned and walked toward the house. I followed, my pulse hammering. The kitchen was empty now, except for Dad loading the dishwasher and Malia wrapping leftover cake. "Sit down, honey," Mum said, gesturing to the breakfast nook. "I'm fine standing." "Sit down." I sat. Mum took the chair across from me, her hands folded like she was conducting a business meeting. "We've been talking, and we think it's time for you to make some changes." "What kind of changes?" "You mentioned that job opportunity in Portland," Malia said, without looking up from the cake. "We think you should take it." "I mentioned it once, months ago, and I said I wasn't interested." "Well, maybe you should reconsider," Dad said, closing the dishwasher with more force than necessary. "Fresh start, new city. It could be good for you." "Good for me, or good for you?" Mum's smile tightened. "Don't be dramatic, Harper. We're thinking about what's best for everyone." "Everyone meaning Ethan?" "Yes, meaning Ethan." Malia finally turned around, her face flushed. "He's starting to notice things, Harper. The way you look at him, the way you hover. It's confusing for a child." "I'm his aunt. I'm supposed to care about him." "There's caring, and then there's—" Mum waved her hand vaguely. "Whatever this is you're doing." "What am I doing exactly?" "You know what you're doing," Dad said quietly, "and it needs to stop." I looked around the kitchen, at these people who'd raised me, who'd convinced me to give up my son, who were now trying to erase me from his life entirely. What if I say no? The silence stretched long enough that I could hear kids laughing outside. "Then we'll have to consider other options," Mum said finally. "Such as?" "Such as limiting your contact with Ethan," Malia said, "for his own good." "You can't do that." "Actually, we can," Dad said. "We're his legal parents. We decide who he spends time with." I stood up slowly. "Is that a threat?" "It's a reality check," Mum replied. "You signed those papers, Harper. You made your choice." "I was 19. I was scared. You all convinced me I had no other option." "You didn't," Malia said coldly, "and you still don't." I looked at each of them, my mother with her calculating eyes, my father with his guilty expression, my sister with her perfect life built on my sacrifice. "Actually," I said, "I think I do." Mum's eyebrows rose. "Excuse me?" I said, "I think I have options, more than you realise." "Harper," Dad warned, "don't do anything stupid." I smiled, and for the first time all day it felt genuine. "Don't worry, Dad, I'm done being stupid." The doorbell rang, cutting through the tension like a knife. "I'll get it," I said, walking toward the front door. "Harper, we're not finished here," Mum called after me. "Actually," I said, opening the door to reveal Raphael standing on the porch with his briefcase, "I think we're just getting started." "Harper?" Raphael stepped inside, his expression professional, but his eyes sharp. "I believe we had an appointment." "Who is this?" Mum appeared in the hallway, her voice tight with suspicion. "This is Raphael. He's my lawyer." The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Dad emerged from the kitchen, Malia right behind him. "Your lawyer?" Malia's voice cracked slightly. "What do you need a lawyer for?" "Maybe we should sit down," Raphael suggested, setting his briefcase on the entry table. "This concerns all of you." "Now wait just a minute," Dad started, but I cut him off. "No, Dad, you wait. For 10 years I've waited. I've been patient. I've played by your rules, but I'm done waiting." "Harper, whatever you think you're doing," Mum began. "I'm not thinking anything. I know exactly what I'm doing." I turned to Raphael. "Do you have the documents?" He nodded, opening his briefcase. "Everything's here." "What documents?" Malia's face had gone pale. Raphael pulled out a thick folder. "The original adoption agreement, signed 10 years ago." "We all know what was signed," Dad said dismissively. "Ancient history." "Actually, Mr. Bennett, I don't think you read it very carefully. Raphael opened the folder, specifically Section 12, subsection C. I don't know what game you're playing, Harper, but it's not a game, Malia. I took the papers from Raphael. Remember what you promised me when you convinced me to sign these? I promised you'd always be part of Ethan's life, Malia said defensively. And you have been. You promised I'd be his aunt, that he'd know who I was, that I'd never be cut out of his life. My voice was getting stronger with each word. You promised that if anyone ever tried to turn him against me, the agreement would be void. Mum's face went white. That's not what it says. Actually, it is. Raphael cleared his throat and began reading. In the event that the adoptive parents or their representatives engage in any behaviour designed to alienate the biological mother from the child, including but not limited to character defamation, restriction of agreed-upon contact, or deliberate interference with the established relationship, this agreement shall be considered null and void, and custody shall revert to the biological mother. That's impossible, Dad sputtered. I read every word of that contract. You read what your lawyer highlighted for you, Raphael replied calmly. But Harper's lawyer, my predecessor, was very thorough about protecting her interests. You had a lawyer? Malia's voice was barely a whisper. I was 19, not stupid. Scared, yes. Pressured, absolutely. But not stupid enough to sign away my rights without protection. This is ridiculous, Mum snapped. You can't just waltz in here 10 years later and what? Enforce a legal contract? Actually, I can. The front door opened and Ryan walked in with Ethan, both of them carrying party clean-up supplies. What's going on? Ryan asked, taking in the tense scene. Who's this? Daddy, why does everyone look mad? Ethan's voice was small, confused. My heart clenched seeing him there, caught in the middle of this explosion. Maybe Ethan should go play in his room, I suggested. Don't tell my son what to do, Malia snapped. Your son? The words came out sharper than I intended. Ethan looked between us, his eyes wide. What's happening? Why is everyone yelling? We're not yelling, sweetheart, Mum said, but her voice was strained. Yes, you are. And who is that man? Why does he have papers? Raphael knelt down to Ethan's level. Hi there, I'm a lawyer. Do you know what that means? Someone who helps with important papers? That's right. Very smart. What kind of papers? Ethan asked. The adults all looked at each other. The moment stretched out, heavy with unspoken truths. Papers about families, Raphael said carefully. Our family? Ethan, go to your room, Malia said firmly. But I want to know. Now, Ethan. Actually, I said, my voice cutting through the tension. Maybe he should stay. Maybe it's time he heard the truth. Harper, don't, Dad warned. Don't what? Don't tell my son who I really am. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Ethan's eyes went wide. Your son? He whispered. Malia lunged forward. Harper, stop this right now. Why? Because the truth is inconvenient? Because it ruins your perfect little story? What does she mean? Ethan's voice was getting higher, more panicked. Daddy, what does she mean? Ryan looked helplessly between his wife and me. Ethan, maybe we should... I'm your birth mother, I said, the words tumbling out before anyone could stop me. I gave birth to you 10 years ago, and they convinced me to let them adopt you. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Ethan asked the question that changed everything. Does that mean you're my real mum? The question hit the room like a grenade. Everyone started talking at once. Ethan, sweetheart, let me explain. Malia reached for him. She's not your real mother, Mum's voice cut through everything else. Your real mother is the woman who raised you, who... Stop! Ethan backed away from all of us, tears streaming down his face. Stop yelling! I don't understand. You don't need to understand, Dad said, moving toward Ethan. This is adult business that has nothing to do with you. Nothing to do with him? I stepped forward. He's the centre of all of this. Harper, you're scaring him, Ryan said quietly. I'm scaring him? What about what you've been doing, telling him I'm mentally unstable, that I make up stories? Ethan's head snapped toward his grandfather. Grandpa, is that what you said? Dad's face flushed red. Son, we were just trying to protect you. From what? From me? I knelt down to Ethan's level. What did they tell you about me? Harper, don't, Malia warned. What did they tell you? I repeated, ignoring her. Ethan wiped his nose with his sleeve. They said you have problems, that you get confused about things, that you pretend things that aren't true. And what do you think? Do I seem confused to you? He shook his head slowly. No, you seem sad. The simple honesty of it broke something inside me. I am sad, Ethan. I've been sad for 10 years. Because you gave me away. Because I was told I had to. Because I was 19 and scared, and everyone convinced me I couldn't take care of you. That's enough, Malia exploded. You're manipulating him. This is exactly why we were worried. Manipulating him with the truth? Your version of the truth. The only version that matters. I stood up, facing my sister. I carried him for 9 months. I gave birth to him. I held him for 3 hours before you convinced me to sign those papers. You signed them willingly. I signed them because you promised I'd always be part of his life, because you swore he'd know who I was, because you said if anyone ever tried to turn him against me, I could take him back. Take him back? Ethan's voice was small and terrified. You want to take me away? The question stopped me cold. I looked down at this beautiful, confused little boy who'd been caught in the middle of our war. I want to be your mother, I said softly, the way I should have been all along. But I already have a mom, he whispered, looking at Malia. You can have more than one person who loves you, I said. No, he can't, Malia was crying now. You can't just show up and destroy our family. Your family was built on a lie. It was built on love, Ryan finally spoke up, his voice shaking. Whatever happened before, whatever was said or promised, we love that boy. We've raised him. We've been there for every scraped knee, every nightmare, every... And where was I? Sitting in the audience at his school plays, watching from the sidelines at his birthday parties, pretending to be the cool aunt while dying inside. That was your choice, Dad shouted. It was never my choice. You took my choice away. Raphael cleared his throat. If I may interrupt, there's something else you all should know. Everyone turned to him. I've been documenting the alienation for months. Phone calls, text messages, witness statements. Mrs. Henry next door has been very helpful. Violet? Mum's face went pale. What does she have to do with this? She's seen and heard quite a bit over the years, including today's conversation about Harper's mental state. You've been spying on us, Malia's voice was shrill. I've been protecting my client's interests and gathering evidence of parental alienation, which is a serious legal matter. This is insane, Dad muttered. Completely insane. What's insane is what you've done to this family, I said. What you've done to him. I pointed at Ethan, who was standing frozen in the middle of our battlefield. I want to go to my room, Ethan said quietly. You can't hide from this, son, Dad said. He's not your son, I snapped. He's mine. He's mine, Malia screamed back. I've been his mother for 10 years. You can't just... She lunged at me, and suddenly we were fighting, actually fighting, clawing and grabbing like children. Ryan tried to pull us apart, while Dad shouted, and Mom grabbed for Ethan. Stop it! Ethan's scream cut through everything. Stop fighting! I hate all of you! He ran toward the front door, but before anyone could stop him, it opened. Violet Henry stood there, taking in the chaos with sharp eyes. I think, she said calmly, it's time someone told this boy the whole truth. Violet stepped into the house like she owned it, her silver hair perfectly styled despite the chaos erupting around her. Ethan ran straight to her, burying his face against her cardigan. "Mrs. Henry, this is a private family matter," Mum said, trying to regain control. "Private?" Violet's laugh was sharp. "Ingrid, half the neighbourhood heard you screaming, and this boy shouldn't be in the middle of it." "We can handle our own family," Dad said firmly, "like you handled it 10 years ago." Violet's eyes were steel. "When you convinced a terrified teenager to give up her baby." "You don't know what you're talking about," Malia said, but her voice wavered. "I know more than you think." Violet kept one arm around Ethan while she faced the room. "I was there, remember? I brought casseroles when Harper was pregnant. I saw her crying on your porch at 2 a.m. I heard the fights." "Those were private conversations," Mum hissed. "Nothing's private when you're screaming loud enough to wake the dead." Violet looked down at Ethan. "Sweetheart, why don't you sit on the couch? The adults need to have a very honest conversation." Ethan nodded and moved to the sofa, his eyes wide and scared. "Now," Violet continued, "let's talk about what really happened 10 years ago." "Mrs. Henry, please," Ryan said quietly. "This is already hard enough on everyone." "Hard on everyone? What about Harper? What about this boy who's been lied to his entire life?" "We never lied to him," Malia protested. "You told him his birth mother was unstable. You told him she abandoned him. You told him she makes up stories." Violet's voice rose with each accusation. "I heard Arthur telling him just this afternoon that Harper is mentally ill." Dad's face went red. "That conversation was what, private? Like when you told Harper she was too young to be a mother, too irresponsible, too selfish." "She was 19, Mum exploded. "She had no job, no husband, no way to support a child." "She had family, she had you, but instead of helping her, you convinced her she was worthless." "That's not true," Malia said, but she wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. "Isn't it?" Violet turned to Harper. "Tell them what your mother said to you in the hospital." I looked at Mom, who had gone pale. "You don't want to do this." "Yes, I do. Tell them, Harper." My voice came out barely above a whisper. "She said I was selfish for wanting to keep him, that I'd ruin his life like I'd ruined everything else." "That's not—" Mum started. "She said I was just like my cousin Sarah. Remember Sarah, Mum? The one who got pregnant at 17 and kept her baby? The one you always called that poor child and such a waste?" "Harper, stop," Dad warned. "She said if I really loved my baby, I'd give him to someone who could actually take care of him, someone responsible, someone like Malia." "I was trying to help you see reason," Mum's voice cracked. "You were trying to get rid of your embarrassment," I shot back. "Your teenage daughter who got knocked up and ruined your perfect family image." "That's enough," Dad roared. "No, it's not enough." Violet stepped forward. "Because there's more, isn't there, Arthur? Tell them about the money." The room went dead silent. "What money?" Ryan asked slowly. Dad's face had gone grey. "Violet, don't." "The money Malia and Ryan paid for the adoption. The money that went straight into your bank account." "That's not true," Malia whispered. $50,000, Violet continued relentlessly. "I saw the cheque. I was there when your father deposited it." "Dad?" I stared at him in horror. "You took money for my baby?" "It wasn't like that," he said desperately. "It was to help with expenses, to—" "To what? Buy your silence, pay for your cooperation in stealing my son?" "We didn't steal anything," Malia was crying now. "We gave him a good home. We loved him." "With money you paid my parents," I turned to Ryan. Did you know they were selling him to you?" Ryan's face was white. We thought the money was for legal fees, medical bills." "It was," Dad said quickly. "That's all it was." "Bullshit," Violet said bluntly. "I saw you buying that new car 2 weeks later. I saw Ingrid's shopping sprees." "You were watching us," Mum's voice was shrill. "I was watching out for Harper. Someone had to." Ethan's small voice cut through the arguing. You sold me!" Everyone turned to look at him. He was sitting on the couch, tears streaming down his face. "Grandpa, did you sell me like a puppy?" "No, son, it wasn't like that." "Then what was it like?" Ethan stood up, his hands clenched into fists. "Because it sounds like you took money to give me away." "Ethan, please." Malia reached for him, but he stepped back. "And you paid for me, like buying a toy?" "We wanted you so badly," Malia sobbed. "We couldn't have children of our own, and—" "So you bought me from my real mom?" The word real hit Malia like a physical blow. She staggered backward, her face crumpling. Ryan stepped forward, his voice quiet but firm. "I think it's time we told him everything." "Ryan—" "No," Malia begged. But Ryan was already reaching into his jacket pocket, pulling out a folded piece of paper. "Harper," he said, "I think you need to see this." Ryan handed me the paper with shaking hands. "I found this in Malia's jewellery box last month. I've been carrying it around ever since." I unfolded it, my heart hammering. It was a letter, written in my own handwriting from 10 years ago. "Read it out loud," Ryan said quietly. "Ryan, don't do this," Malia pleaded. "She deserves to know. They all do." His voice was steady, but his eyes were full of pain. I cleared my throat and began reading. "Dear Malia and Ryan, I know we agreed I would sign the papers, but I've been thinking. I want to keep my baby. I know I'm young, but I love him so much already. I think I can do this if you help me. Please don't make me give him away. Please, love, Harper." The silence was deafening. "I never got that letter," I whispered. "Because I intercepted it," Malia said, her voice barely audible. "You what?" Dad stared at his daughter in shock. "She was going to change her mind. She was going to take him back." "He was never yours to take," I screamed. "I couldn't have children," Malia screamed back. "Do you know what that's like? Watching everyone else get pregnant while your body fails you over and over." "So you stole mine?" "I saved him. Look at your life, Harper. Look at where you are. You can barely take care of yourself." "Because you destroyed me. Because you took the only thing that mattered to me." Raphael stepped forward. "There's more evidence. Phone recordings, text messages, witness statements, enough to prove systematic alienation and fraud." "Fraud?" Ryan's voice was hollow. "B, intercepting legal correspondence, accepting payment under false pretenses, violating the terms of the adoption agreement." Raphael's voice was clinical. "It's enough to void the adoption and potentially bring criminal charges." "Criminal charges?" Mum's face went white. "Against all of you. Conspiracy, fraud, parental alienation. The state takes these things very seriously." "This is insane," Dad muttered. "Completely insane." "What's insane is what you did to your own daughter," Violet said sharply. "What you did to this family." Ethan had been sitting quietly through all of this, but now he stood up. "I want to talk to Harper, alone." "Sweetheart, maybe that's not a good idea right now," Malia said. "I don't care what you think is a good idea." Ethan's voice cracked. "You lied to me. All of you lied to me." "We were protecting you," Dad said weakly. "From what? From knowing my real mum loves me?" The words hit Malia like a physical blow. She doubled over, sobbing. "Ethan," I said carefully, "we don't have to talk now. This is a lot to process." "I want to know everything," he said, his young face set with determination. "I want to know about when I was born. I want to know why you gave me away. I want to know why they said you were crazy." "I'm not crazy," I said softly. "I was just young and scared." "And they made you give me away?" "They convinced me it was best for you. But you didn't want to." I looked at this beautiful boy, my son, standing in the wreckage of our family. "I never wanted to give you away, not for 1 second." "Then why did you?" "Because I believed them when they said I wasn't good enough to be your mother." Ethan walked over to me, his eyes serious. Are you good enough now? The question broke my heart and put it back together at the same time. I don't know, but I want to try. What happens now? Ryan asked quietly. Raphael closed his briefcase. Now we go to court. The adoption agreement is void due to fraud and alienation. Custody reverts to Harper. Just like that? Malia's voice was desperate. Just like that? But what about Ethan? What about what he wants? Everyone turned to look at him. He was still standing next to me, close enough that I could smell his birthday cake on his breath. I want to live with my real mom, he said quietly. But I want to see you too, sometimes. Malia's sob echoed through the room. That can be arranged, Raphael said. Supervised visitation, gradually increasing based on behaviour and compliance with court orders. This will destroy us, Mum whispered. You destroyed yourselves, Violet said firmly. 10 years ago when you chose money and appearances over doing what was right. The whole town will know, Dad said, his voice hollow. Good, I said, surprising myself with how strong I sounded. Maybe it'll stop you from doing this to someone else. Harper, Ethan said, tugging on my sleeve, can we go home now? Home, the word hit me like lightning. Yeah, I said, taking his hand. Let's go home. As we walked toward the door, Malia called out one last desperate plea. Harper, please, he's all I have. I turned back to look at her, this woman who had raised my son, who had loved him in her own broken way. He was all I had too, I said, and you took him anyway. The apartment felt different with Ethan's things scattered around. His backpack by the door, his sneakers kicked off in the hallway, his homework spread across my kitchen table. Real signs of life instead of the careful emptiness I'd maintained for so long. Mum? His voice still caught me off guard every time. Can you help me with this math problem? Sure. I sat down next to him, looking at the worksheet. What's giving you trouble? This word, problem, about sharing cookies. It says if you have 12 cookies and 3 friends, how many does each person get? Well, what do you think? He chewed his pencil eraser. 4 each? But what if one friend doesn't want cookies? What if they're on a diet or something? I smiled. You're overthinking it. Sometimes math problems are simpler than real life. Real life is complicated, he said seriously. Yeah, it is. The doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Malia standing on my doorstep, holding a small wrapped box. It's Malia, I called to Ethan. He looked up from his homework. Do I have to see her? Not if you don't want to. It's your choice. He thought for a moment. I guess I can. For a little bit. I opened the door. Malia looked terrible. Dark circles under her eyes, her hair unwashed, her clothes wrinkled. Hi, she said quietly. Hi. I brought Ethan something, his favourite book. He left it at the house. I took the package. Thanks. Can I see him, just for a minute? I looked back at Ethan, who nodded reluctantly. Come in, but just for a few minutes. Malia stepped inside, her eyes taking in the small space. It's nice. Cosy. It's home. She walked over to where Ethan sat at the table. Hi, sweetheart. Hi. He didn't look up from his homework. I brought you something. She held out the wrapped box. He opened it carefully. Inside was a worn copy of Where the Red Fern Grows. You read this to me when I was little, he said softly. Every night for 2 months, you made me start over every time we finished. I remember. Malia's eyes filled with tears. Ethan, I want you to know that everything I did because I love you. I know. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry for lying to you about Harper. I'm sorry for saying those things about her. Ethan finally looked up. Why did you do it? Because I was scared of losing you, scared you'd love her more than me. I can love both of you, he said simply. There's enough love for everyone. The words hit Malia like a physical blow. She started crying, quiet tears that she tried to wipe away quickly. "I know that now," she whispered, "but I was so afraid." "Are you still afraid?" She looked at him, then at me. "Terrified, but I'm trying to be brave." "Good," Ethan said. "Being brave is important." My phone buzzed. A text from Kimberly. "Saw the news article. How are you holding up?" The story had broken 3 days ago. Local family's adoption scandal rocks community. The reporter had been thorough, interviewing neighbours, digging into court records, even talking to other families who'd used the same lawyer my parents had recommended. Dad had resigned from his job at the bank. Mum had stepped down from her charity board. The whispers followed them everywhere now. "I should go," Malia said, standing up. "Malia," I called as she reached the door. "The supervised visits start next week. Raphael will be in touch about the schedule." She nodded. "Thank you for letting me see him at all." "He loves you. That doesn't just disappear because of what happened. Even after everything I did. Even after everything you did." She left quietly, and I locked the door behind her. "Mum?" Ethan was still at the table, but he'd closed his math book. "Yeah? Do you think they'll be okay? Grandma and Grandpa and Malia?" I sat back down next to him. "I don't know. They made some really bad choices. There are consequences for that." "Are you glad about the consequences?" The question caught me off guard. Was I glad? Seeing my parents' shame, Malia's devastation, the family name dragged through the mud? "I'm glad you're here," I said finally. "I'm glad we're together. Everything else, it just is what it is." "Do you think you'll ever forgive them?" "Maybe someday, when I'm ready, when they've earned it." "What about me? Do I have to forgive them?" "That's up to you. You don't owe anyone forgiveness, Ethan, not even family." He nodded thoughtfully. "I think I want to finish my homework now." "Okay." As he bent over his worksheet, I watched him, really watched him. My son, in my home, doing homework at my kitchen table. The boy I'd carried, the child I'd lost, the young man I was getting to know. "Hey, Ethan." "Yeah?" "I love you." He looked up and smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from him since this all started. "I love you too, Mum." And for the first time in 10 years, that felt like enough. They say money can't buy happiness, but let me tell you what it can buy. A very expensive prison cell with silk curtains and a husband who treats you like his personal ATM. My name is June, and for the past 9 years, 11 months and 16 days, I've been married to a man who sees dollar signs when he looks at me. Not love, not even lust anymore. Just 30 million reasons to keep me around until our 10th anniversary hits in 2 weeks. "June, darling, we need to discuss your little charity obsession again." I looked up from my coffee to find Lucas standing in the doorway of our marble-clad kitchen, already dressed in his $1,000 suit. Even at 7 in the morning, he managed to look like he was posing for a magazine cover. Dark hair perfectly styled, jaw sharp enough to cut glass, and those blue eyes that once made my heart skip. Now, they just made my stomach turn. "Good morning to you too, honey," I said, keeping my voice level. "Which charity are we talking about today?" "The women's shelter downtown." Jameson reviewed the request. He walked over to the coffee machine, not bothering to look at me. $5,000 to help abuse victims? Really, June? Don't you think that's a bit dramatic? I set down my mug carefully, very carefully. Dramatic. Well, yes, these women made their choices. Why should our money... My money. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Lucas froze, his hand halfway to the coffee pot. When he turned around, his smile was sharp as a blade. "Excuse me." "Nothing, forget I said anything." But he was already walking toward me, that predatory gleam in his eyes that I'd learned to recognize over the years. No, let's talk about this. Your money. That's interesting, considering you haven't had access to a single penny without trustee approval since we got married. He leaned against the counter, crossing his arms. Remind me again, sweetheart, who are those trustees? I knew the answer. God, did I know the answer. You and your father. That's right, me and Dad, and we've been very generous, haven't we? This beautiful house, your credit cards, your allowance. Allowance. The word tasted bitter. I'm 32 years old, Lucas. I have a master's degree in business, and you give me an allowance like I'm 12. His laugh was cold. Well, maybe if you acted more mature about money, we could revisit that arrangement. But throwing thousands at every sob story that crosses your desk? That's not mature, June. That's emotional. I wanted to throw my coffee in his face. I wanted to scream that my grandfather built his empire specifically so I'd never have to depend on anyone. I wanted to tell him that Samuel Olson would roll over in his grave if he knew his fortune was being used to keep his granddaughter in line. Instead, I smiled. You're right. I'm sorry. The apology seemed to satisfy him. His posture relaxed, and he actually reached over to pat my hand like I was a good dog. That's my girl. Look, I know it's hard sometimes, feeling like you can't just spend freely, but Dad and we're looking out for you. Women can be impulsive with money, emotional. It's not your fault, it's just biology. Biology? Right. I understand, I said softly. Thank you for protecting me from myself. He beamed at that, actually beamed, like he'd just solved world hunger. Exactly. See, this is why we work so well together. He glanced at his watch. I've got to run. Meeting with the Hartwell Group about the merger. Don't wait up tonight. It'll probably run late. Another late meeting. How convenient. Of course. I'll just stay in and read. Perfect. Oh, and June? He paused at the doorway. Maybe think about taking up something more constructive than all this charity work. Jameson mentioned you might enjoy planning dinner parties. You know, things that actually benefit our social standing. And then he was gone, leaving me alone with my coffee and the taste of bile in my throat. I sat there for a long moment, listening to his car pull out of the driveway. Then I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. Not the iPhone Lucas monitored, but the burner phone I'd bought 6 months ago with cash. One text message waited for me. Got the photos you wanted. When can we meet? I smiled for the first time all morning, a real smile this time. 2 weeks until our anniversary, 2 weeks until the trust clause kicked in and I'd finally be free. Unless, of course, someone could prove infidelity first. Good thing I'd been keeping receipts. The coffee shop on 5th Street wasn't the kind of place Lucas would ever set foot in. Too many college students, too much indie music, and definitely not enough marble surfaces for his taste, which made it perfect for my purposes. I spotted Elena before she saw me, her red hair unmistakable even from across the crowded room. She was already nursing what looked like her second latte, fingers drumming impatiently on the table. When our eyes met, her face lit up with that fierce smile that had gotten us both into trouble back in college. June! She stood up so fast she nearly knocked over her chair. God, look at you! You're practically glowing! Am I? I slid into the seat across from her, glancing around out of habit. I feel like I haven't slept in weeks. That's the glow of a woman with a plan. Eleanor leaned forward, lowering her voice. So, how did Prince Charming react to being cut off from his charity fund? About as well as you'd expect. Lots of mansplaining about women and money. Ugh! Elena made a gagging motion. I still can't believe you married him. I mean, I know why you married him, but Jesus, June, 9 years of that? I stirred my coffee, watching the cream swirl. He wasn't always like this. When we first met, he was different, charming, attentive. He made me feel like I was the only woman in the world. And then you signed the marriage certificate. And then I signed the marriage certificate, I agreed. Amazing how quickly someone can change when they get what they want. Eleanor reached across the table and squeezed my hand. But not for much longer, right? 2 weeks. 13 days, actually. But who's counting? I pulled out the burner phone. Terry texted me this morning. He has photos. Photos of what? Or should I say, photos of who? Before I could answer, my regular phone buzzed. A text from Lucas. Dinner with clients tonight, don't wait up. Again. I showed Elena the screen. She snorted. Clients, right. What's her name again? Valerie. She works in marketing at his firm. I tucked both phones away. Terry's been following them for 3 months. Hotels, restaurants, weekend trips to the Hamptons, while I'm supposedly visiting my mother, who you haven't actually visited in 2 years. Details? I shrugged. The point is, I have evidence, lots of it. Photos, credit card receipts, hotel records, everything I need to prove infidelity and void the trust agreement. Eleanor sat back, grinning. You magnificent, devious woman. So what's the plan? Confront him, lawyer up, public humiliation? I'm meeting Terry in an hour to go over everything. But Eleanor... I hesitated. There's something else. Something I haven't told you. Her smile faded. What kind of something? Terry thinks Jameson might be skimming from the trust, moving money into private accounts, inflating management fees. If he's right... Holy shit. Elena's voice was barely a whisper. June, that's embezzlement. That's federal prison time. I know, and if I can prove it, I don't just get my freedom, I get revenge. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of it settling between us. Finally, Eleanor spoke. Are you sure about this? I mean, really sure? Because once you pull this trigger, there's no going back. Lucas will be destroyed. His whole family will be destroyed. I thought about this morning, about Lucas patting my hand like a pet, about 9 years of allowances and permissions and being treated like a child who couldn't be trusted with her own inheritance. They destroyed me first, I said quietly. They just did it slowly so I wouldn't notice until it was too late. Elena nodded. Then let's burn it all down. My phone buzzed again. This time it was the burner. Meet me at the usual place in 20. You're going to want to see this. T. I showed Elena the message. She whistled low. The usual place? Parking garage on Elm. Level 3, northeast corner. Terry's paranoid about being seen. Smart man. Elena drained her latte and stood up. Want backup? No, but thanks. This is something I need to do alone. I gathered my purse, then paused. Elena, what if I'm wrong? What if I'm just as bad as they are? She looked at me for a long moment, her expression serious. June, honey, bad people don't ask themselves that question. They took your money, your freedom, and your dignity. Taking it back isn't evil, it's justice. As I walked to my car, Eleanor's words echoed in my head. Justice, not revenge. Justice. I could live with that. The parking garage was nearly empty when I arrived. Terry's beat-up Honda was already there, tucked between 2 SUVs. He stepped out as I approached, a manila envelope in his hands. June, right on time. What do you have for me? He held up the envelope, his expression grim. Everything you asked for, and a whole lot more. More? Let's just say your husband's been busier than we thought. And his father. Terry shook his head. You're going to want to sit down for this one. The envelope felt heavier than it should have. I sat in my car, hands trembling slightly as I opened it. Terry leaned against his Honda, giving me space but staying close enough to answer questions. The first photo made my stomach drop. Lucas and Valerie at the Ritz-Carlton, her hand on his chest as they waited for the elevator. The timestamp showed last Tuesday, the same night he'd told me he was working late on the Morrison account. There are 12 more like that, Terry said quietly. Different hotels, different dates, all within the last 3 months. I flipped through them. Lucas kissing her in his car, Valerie leaving his office building at midnight, the two of them at a restaurant I'd been begging him to take me to for years. "This is more than enough," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "But you said there was more." Terry pulled out a second envelope. "Your father-in-law's been creative with the trust funds. I found 3 separate accounts under shell companies he controls. Money's been flowing out of your trust and into his personal investments for at least 2 years. How much? Conservative estimate? About 4 million, maybe more." The number hit me like a physical blow. $4 million, stolen from my inheritance while they lectured me about fiscal responsibility. "Can you prove it? Bank records, wire transfers, incorporation documents, it's all here." Terry handed me the second envelope. "June, this isn't just embezzlement. This is organised fraud. If you take this to the FBI—" "Not yet." I tucked both envelopes into my purse. "I need to be smart about this, strategic." Terry nodded. "What's your next move?" "The Gross family's annual charity gala is tomorrow night. Everyone will be there, Lucas, Jameson, even his mother. I need to play the perfect wife one more time while I figure out exactly how to use this." "Be careful if they suspect you know something." "They won't. I've been playing this role for 9 years. I can manage one more night." The next evening, I stood in front of my bedroom mirror, adjusting the diamond necklace Lucas had given me for our 5th anniversary. The irony wasn't lost on me. Jewellery bought with my own stolen money. "You look beautiful," Lucas said from the doorway. He'd actually bothered to come home early to get ready, probably because the gala was important for his image. "Thank you." I turned, smoothing down the black cocktail dress. "Are you excited about tonight? Should be a good turnout. The Hartwell Group is sending their entire board." He straightened his tie. "Remember, we're trying to close that merger, so please, no talk about your little charity projects tonight." "Of course not. I'll be the perfect corporate wife." He smiled and kissed my cheek. "That's my girl." The ballroom at the Meridian Hotel was packed with the city's elite. I recognised faces from magazine covers and society pages, all of them sipping champagne and pretending to care about childhood literacy while they networked. Jameson appeared at my elbow within minutes of our arrival, looking distinguished in his tuxedo. At 63, he still commanded attention when he walked into a room. Too bad he was a thief. "June, darling, you look radiant tonight." "Thank you, Jameson. Lovely event as always." "Yes, well, we do try to give back to the community." He gestured around the room. "Though I must say, the overhead costs keep climbing. These charity functions are becoming quite expensive to organise." I bet they are, I thought, especially when you're skimming off the top. "Hi, June!" Ramona appeared beside us, looking flustered. Lucas's mother had always been the most human member of the family, though she'd never stood up to her husband or son when it mattered. "Hello, Ramona. You look lovely." "Thank you, dear. Have you seen Lucas? I need to speak with him about something." "He's by the bar, talking to the Hartwell people," Jameson said dismissively. "What's so urgent it can't wait?" Ramona glanced around nervously. "It's about those accounts you asked me to sign papers for last month, the ones for the foundation." Jameson's face went very still. "What about them?" "Well, I was reviewing our tax documents, and I noticed some discrepancies, large transfers that don't match what you told me they were for." "Ramona, this is neither the time nor the place." $4 million, Jameson. That's not a discrepancy, that's a fortune." The blood drained from Jameson's face. I kept my expression carefully neutral, but inside I was cheering. Ramona had just confirmed everything Terry had found. "We'll discuss this at home," Jameson said through gritted teeth. "No, we'll discuss it now." Ramona's voice was getting louder, drawing glances from nearby guests. I signed those papers because I trusted you, but if you've been stealing from June's trust—" "Keep your voice down," Jameson hissed. "You're making a scene." "Good. Maybe it's time people knew what kind of man you really are." I watched this family drama unfold with fascination. Ramona had clearly reached her breaking point, and Jameson was scrambling to contain the damage. "Ladies and gentlemen," the MC's voice boomed over the microphone, "if I could have your attention, please. We're about to begin the auction portion of our evening." The crowd began moving toward the stage area. Jameson grabbed Ramona's arm. "We're leaving, now." No, we're not." Ramona yanked her arm free. "I'm tired of your bullying, Jameson, tired of watching you control everyone around you." She turned to me, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "June, honey, I'm so sorry. I should have spoken up years ago. The way they treat you, it's not right." "Ramona, please," I started. "No, let me say this. You're a good woman, and you deserve better than what this family has given you." With that, she walked away, leaving Jameson and me standing in awkward silence. "She's been under a lot of stress lately," he said finally. "Menopause, you know, makes women emotional." I nodded sympathetically. Of course, these things happen. But as I watched Ramona disappear into the crowd, I realized something important. I wasn't the only one ready to burn the Gross family empire to the ground, and sometimes the best revenge comes from the most unexpected allies. The morning after the gala, I sat in Elena's kitchen while she made us both strong coffee. My hands were still shaking slightly from what I'd discovered in my grandfather's old papers the night before. "So let me get this straight," Elena said, setting a mug in front of me. "Your grandfather left a secret clause in the trust that nobody knew about." "Not nobody. He told me about it when I was 16, right before he died. I thought it was just him being dramatic, you know. Old man ramblings about protecting me from fortune hunters." I pulled out the handwritten note I'd found tucked inside his personal Bible. "But look at this," Elena read aloud. "Should my granddaughter's marriage prove to be built on deception or betrayal, she may invoke this clause to immediately assume full control of her inheritance, regardless of the 10-year stipulation." "Holy shit, June, this is it. This is your way out." "There's more. He left instructions with a law firm in Boston, completely separate from the lawyers handling the trust. They've been waiting for me to contact them for almost 10 years. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. It's about Lucas." "V." Elena peered over my shoulder. "V, as in Valerie?" "Has to be. How did she get my number? More importantly, why does she want to talk to you?" Before I could answer, my regular phone rang. "Lucas?" "Hey, honey, where are you?" "Having coffee with Elena. Why?" "Dad wants to meet with us this afternoon. Something about restructuring the trust before our anniversary." My blood went cold. Restructuring how? He didn't give details, just said it was important we handle some paperwork before the 10-year mark hits. His voice was casual, but I could hear something underneath it. Excitement? Anticipation? "What time?" 3 o'clock, his office. "Don't be late, June. This is important." The line went dead. Eleanor was staring at me. "They know," she said quietly. "They can't know. There's no way. Ramona, last night at the gala, she was asking questions about the missing money. What if she told them you were listening?" I felt sick. "I need to call the Boston lawyers, now." The law firm of Morrison and Associates had been waiting for my call since 2000. The senior partner, Margaret Morrison, sounded almost relieved when I explained who I was. "Miss June, we've been hoping you'd reach out. Your grandfather was very specific about the circumstances under which you might need our services. I have evidence of my husband's infidelity, multiple affairs over several years. That would certainly qualify under the betrayal clause. How quickly do you need to move?" "They want to meet this afternoon about restructuring the trust. I think they're planning to cut me off completely before our anniversary. Then we need to act immediately. I can have the paperwork ready within 2 hours. But Miss June, once you invoke this clause, there's no going back. Your marriage will be over, and your husband's family will lose all control over your inheritance. Good. After I hung up, Elena grabbed my hands. Are you sure about this? Really, truly sure? Elena, they've stolen $4 million from me. Lucas has been cheating for years, and now they want to restructure the trust to make sure I never see a penny of my own money. I stood up. I'm not just sure, I'm ready for war. I was halfway home when my phone buzzed again. The unknown number. Meet me at Central Park, the bench by the pond, 1 hour, come alone. V. Against my better judgment, I went. Valerie was already there when I arrived, looking nothing like the confident woman from Terry's photographs. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she kept glancing around nervously. You came, she said as I sat down beside her. You said it was about Lucas. It is. She turned to face me. Look, I know what you must think of me. I know I'm the other woman, and I know that makes me terrible. But there are things you need to know. Such as, Lucas is planning to leave you right after your anniversary. He's been bragging about it for weeks, saying he's finally going to be free of his boring wife and still keep access to your money. How? His father found some loophole, something about you being mentally unstable or financially irresponsible. They're going to have you declared incompetent and maintain control of the trust indefinitely. The world tilted. That's not possible. Isn't it? Think about it, June. All those times they've called you emotional, impulsive, bad with money, they've been building a case against you for years. Why are you telling me this? Valerie laughed bitterly. Because I'm an idiot who thought he actually loved me. But yesterday I overheard him on the phone with his father. He called me a useful distraction and said he'd dump me as soon as the trust was secured. So you want revenge too. I want him to get what he deserves, and I want you to know that whatever you're planning, and don't pretend you're not planning something, I won't stand in your way. She stood up, then paused. June, for what it's worth, I'm sorry. You didn't deserve any of this. As I watched her walk away, my phone rang. Margaret Morrison. Miss June, the papers are ready, but I just received some disturbing news. Someone's been making inquiries about your mental health records. Recent inquiries. What kind of inquiries? The kind that suggests someone is building a case for incompetency proceedings. If I were you, I'd move very quickly. Today, if possible. I checked my watch. 2:30. The meeting with Jameson was in 30 minutes. I'll be there in 20 minutes, I told Margaret. I'll be waiting. As I drove toward downtown, I called Elena. Change of plans. I'm not going to wait for them to make their move. I'm making mine first. June, what are you doing? Oh, what I should have done years ago. I'm taking back what's mine. I walked into Jameson's office at exactly 3 o'clock, the envelope from Margaret Morrison tucked safely in my purse. Lucas was already there, lounging in one of the leather chairs like he owned the place, which, in his mind, he probably did. June, perfect timing, Jameson said, without looking up from his papers. Please sit down. We have some important matters to discuss. I took the chair across from Lucas, keeping my expression neutral. Of course. What's this about? Jameson finally looked at me, his smile cold and calculating. Your future, my dear. Your financial future, specifically. I don't understand. Well, as you know, your 10th anniversary is in just over a week, and while that would normally trigger your full access to the trust, we've discovered some concerning patterns in your behaviour. Lucas leaned forward, his eyes bright with anticipation. Dad's been reviewing your spending requests over the years, June. the impulsive charity donations, the emotional outbursts, the inability to understand basic financial concepts. I understand finances perfectly well. Do you? Jameson pulled out a thick folder. Because according to our records, you've requested funding for 17 different charitable causes in the past 2 years alone, often without proper research or vetting. Xin, helping people isn't a character flaw. No, but poor judgment is. Lucas's voice was getting more excited, and unfortunately, poor judgment can be grounds for extending the trust's protective measures indefinitely. The room went very quiet. I could hear the clock ticking on Jameson's desk, the distant sound of traffic outside. What are you saying? We're saying, Jameson continued smoothly, that we've consulted with several medical professionals about your behavioral patterns, impulsivity, emotional instability, financial irresponsibility. These could be signs of underlying mental health issues that would make independent financial management inadvisable. You want to have me declared incompetent. We want to protect you, Lucas said, but his grin gave him away. From yourself, mostly. This way, you'll always be taken care of, and the money will be managed by people who actually understand how to handle it. I stared at him. At this man I'd been married to for almost 10 years. This man who was sitting here, gleefully explaining how he planned to steal my inheritance and lock me away like a mental patient. And what happens to our marriage in this scenario? Lucas and Jameson exchanged a look. Well, Lucas said slowly, that's complicated. Obviously, caring for someone with your challenges would be a significant burden. I'd need support, perhaps even companionship. You mean Valerie? The name hit the room like a bomb. Both men froze. I don't know what you're talking about, Lucas said, but his voice had gone tight. Really? Because I think you do. I reached into my purse and pulled out one of Terry's photographs, the one of Lucas and Valerie kissing outside the Ritz-Carlton. I slid it across the desk. Jameson picked it up, his face going pale. Lucas, what is this? It's nothing, just a business associate. It's your son cheating on his wife, I said calmly, one of many such photographs I have in my possession. Lucas shot to his feet. You had me followed? You crazy bitch, you had me followed? Crazy? I stood up too, my voice deadly quiet. That's interesting word choice, considering what you were just trying to do to me. June, let's all calm down, Jameson said, but I could see the panic in his eyes. These pictures, they could be misinterpreted. Could they? What about the hotel receipts, the credit card statements, the weekend trips to the Hamptons while I was supposedly visiting my mother? You don't understand, Lucas said desperately. Valerie means nothing to me. She's just a useful distraction. Yes, she told me you called her that. The colour drained from his face. You talked to her? She was very informative, especially about your plans to dump her once you secured my trust fund. Jameson was frantically shuffling through papers now. June, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Perhaps we should postpone this meeting. No, I don't think we should. I reached into my purse again and pulled out the second envelope, the one from Margaret Morrison, because I have something I'd like to share with both of you. I placed the envelope on Jameson's desk. Go ahead, open it. Jameson's hands were shaking as he broke the seal. He pulled out the legal documents, his eyes scanning the pages. I watched his face go from confusion to horror to absolute terror. What is it? Lucas demanded. Dad, what does it say? Jameson's voice was barely a whisper. It's from Morrison and Associates in Boston. They're invoking a clause in your grandfather's trust. A clause that... He swallowed hard. A clause that voids our trusteeship immediately upon proof of betrayal or deception in your marriage. What does that mean? Lucas grabbed the papers from his father. What the hell does that mean? It means, I said, sitting back down and crossing my legs, that as of this moment you have no control over my trust fund, none at all. That's impossible. There's no such clause. There is. My grandfather wrote it himself in his own hand. He was very specific about protecting me from fortune hunters and manipulative husbands. Lucas was reading frantically now, his face getting redder by the second. This can't be legal. We'll fight it. With what money? I smiled sweetly. Because I should mention, I also have evidence of your father's embezzlement. $4 million stolen from my trust over the past 2 years. Jameson made a choking sound. So here's what's going to happen, I continued, my voice perfectly calm. You're going to transfer every penny back to my accounts. You're going to resign as trustees immediately, and you're going to pray I don't decide to press criminal charges. June, please, Lucas said, his arrogance finally cracking. We can work this out. We can. No, we can't. I stood up and walked toward the door. Oh, and Lucas, I'll have divorce papers drawn up by tomorrow. I'm sure Valerie will be thrilled to console you. I paused at the door and looked back at them. 2 powerful men, reduced to panic and desperation in the span of 10 minutes. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure doing business with you. I made it exactly 3 steps out of Jameson's office before Lucas caught up with me in the hallway. June, wait! He grabbed my arm, spinning me around. His face was flushed, sweat beading on his forehead. You can't just walk away. We need to talk about this. There's nothing to talk about. I yanked my arm free. It's over, Lucas, all of it. No, it's not. Look, I made some mistakes, okay? But we can fix this. We can go to counselling, work things out. Counselling? I laughed, the sound echoing off the marble walls. You were literally just trying to have me declared mentally incompetent so you could steal my inheritance. And now you want couples therapy? I never wanted to hurt you. Dad pushed for the incompetency thing, not me. I just went along with it because you're weak. Because you've never made a decision in your life without Daddy's approval. His face darkened. Don't you dare talk about my father like that. He's done everything for this family, including putting up with your ungrateful everything. Is that what you call embezzling $4 million from my trust? That wasn't embezzlement. Those were legitimate management fees and investment expenses. Bullshit! I stepped closer, lowering my voice. I have bank records, Lucas. Wire transfers to shell companies. Your father has been stealing from me for years, and you knew about it. Prove it. The elevator dinged behind us. Jameson stepped out, looking like he'd aged 10 years in the past 5 minutes. Lucas, get back in here, now! Dad, she's bluffing. She has to be bluffing. She's not bluffing. Jameson's voice was hollow. I just called Morrison and Associates. The clause is real. The trust transfer is already in motion. Lucas stared at his father, then at me. How much? How much what? How much are you taking? There has to be something left for us, some kind of settlement. Everything. The word came out flat and final. I'm taking everything that was stolen from me, every penny. That's $30 million. Actually, it's closer to 34 million now, thanks to compound interest, plus the 4 million your father stole with penalties. Jameson made a strangled sound. June, please, be reasonable. We can work out a payment plan for the missing funds. You don't need to destroy us completely. Destroy you? I turned to face him. You mean the way you destroyed me, the way you treated me like a child for 9 years, the way you made me beg for my own money to help abuse victims while you were stealing millions. We gave you everything you needed. You gave me nothing. The words exploded out of me, louder than I'd intended. A few office workers had stopped to stare. You gave me an allowance like I was 12 years old. You made me ask permission to spend my own inheritance on charity. You called me emotional and unstable and irresponsible while you were robbing me blind. June, lower your voice, Lucas hissed. People are staring. Good, let them stare. Let them see what the great Jameson Gross really is, a thief who steals from his own daughter-in-law. I am not your father-in-law anymore, Jameson said coldly, and after today you'll have nothing to do with this family. Finally, something we can agree on. The elevator opened again, and Ramona stepped out. She took one look at the three of us and sighed. I can hear you shouting from the lobby. What's going on? June's lost her mind, Lucas said quickly. She's making wild accusations about Dad and threatening to... I told her. Ramona's quiet words cut through Lucas's rambling. About the missing money, I told her everything. The hallway went dead silent. Ramona, Jameson's voice was dangerous. What did you do? What I should have done years ago. I told her the truth. Ramona looked at me with something like pride. About the shell companies, the fake investment fees, all of it. You had no right. I had every right. She's family, Jameson, or she was supposed to be. Instead, you and Lucas treated her like a prisoner in her own life. Mom, you don't understand, Lucas started. I understand perfectly. I understand that my husband is a criminal and my son is a cheater. Ramona's voice was getting stronger. I understand that I've been complicit in this for too long. Ramona, stop, Jameson commanded. No, I'm done stopping. I'm done being quiet while you hurt people. She turned to me. June, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything we put you through. It's not your fault. It is. I knew what they were doing and I said nothing. I let them convince me it was for your own good, that you needed protecting. But you didn't need protecting from the world. You needed protecting from us. Lucas was looking between his parents like he'd never seen them before. Mum, what are you saying? I'm saying I'm leaving your father tonight, and I'm testifying on June's behalf if she decides to press charges. You can't do that, Jameson said, his composure finally cracking. I'm your husband. We have a prenup. A prenup that becomes void if you commit felony fraud. Ramona smiled grimly. I may have been quiet all these years, but I wasn't stupid. The elevator dinged again. This time 2 men in suits stepped out. One of them approached us. Jameson Gross? Yes, I'm Agent Martinez, FBI Financial Crimes Division. We'd like to speak with you about some irregularities in the Samuel Trust accounts. Jameson's face went white. I need to call my lawyer. That's your right, sir, but we're going to need you to come with us. As they led Jameson away, Lucas turned to me one last time. June, please, don't do this. We can still fix things between us. I looked at this man who had controlled my life for nearly a decade. This man who had cheated on me, stolen from me, and tried to have me declared insane. Lucas, I said quietly, go call Valerie. You're going to need someone to comfort you. June? We're done. We've been done for years. I was just too stupid to see it. I walked toward the elevator, leaving him standing there with his mother. As the doors closed, I heard Ramona's voice, firm and clear. Lucas, it's time you learn to stand on your own 2 feet, because the gravy train just derailed. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in my new downtown apartment when Elena burst through the door with a bottle of champagne and a newspaper. Have you seen this? She slammed the paper down on my coffee table. The headline read, Local businessman arrested in multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. I saw it online this morning. I poured myself another cup of coffee. Jameson's bail hearing is tomorrow. $4 million in restitution plus penalties. The FBI seized his house, his cars, even his golf club membership. Eleanor was practically bouncing with excitement. June, you destroyed him completely. The evidence destroyed him. I just provided it. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Can we meet? I need to talk to you. Eleanor read it over my shoulder. Lucas. Has to be. He's been calling from different numbers all week. Are you going to answer? No point. There's nothing left to say. But even as I said it, I was curious. The divorce papers had been served 2 weeks ago. His lawyer had tried to contest them, claiming emotional distress and temporary insanity on my part, but Margaret Morrison had shut that down fast. The infidelity evidence was ironclad. My doorbell rang. Eleanor and I looked at each other. "You expecting someone?" she asked. I walked to the intercom. "Hello? June, it's me. Please, I just need 5 minutes." Lucas. He'd found my new address. "Go away, Lucas. We have nothing to discuss. Please, I'm begging you. 5 minutes, and then I'll leave you alone forever." Elena was shaking her head vigorously, but something in his voice made me pause. He sounded broken. "Fine, 5 minutes." I buzzed him up. Elena grabbed my arm. "June, this is a bad idea. What if he's dangerous? What if—" "He's not dangerous. He's pathetic. There's a difference." When I opened the door, I barely recognized him. Lucas had lost at least 20 pounds. His expensive suit was wrinkled, and he had dark circles under his eyes. He looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for letting me up. You have 4 minutes and 30 seconds left." He walked into my living room, taking in the modest furniture, the stack of charity applications on my desk, the complete absence of anything that had defined our old life together. "Nice place," he said. "It's honest, something you wouldn't understand." He flinched. "I deserve that. You deserve a lot worse than that." "I know." He sat down heavily on my couch. "June, I came here to tell you that I'm sorry. Really, truly sorry. Not because I got caught, not because I lost everything, but because I hurt you for years." "Your time's running out, Lucas." "Valerie left me." The words came out in a rush. "The day after Dad got arrested, she said she couldn't be with someone who had nothing to offer her." "Shocking. I know you think I'm getting what I deserve, and maybe I am, but I need you to know that I did love you. At the beginning, I really did. But not enough to stay faithful, not enough to treat me like an equal, not enough to stop your father from stealing from me. No, not enough for any of that." He looked up at me, and for a moment I saw a glimpse of the man I'd fallen in love with 10 years ago. "I was weak, June. I let Dad control everything, including me. I let him convince me that you needed managing, that you were too emotional to handle your own money." "I was never too emotional. I was just married to the wrong man. I know that now. I know a lot of things now." He stood up. "I'm leaving town, going to stay with my cousin in Denver until I figure out what to do next." "Good luck with that." "June." He paused at the door. "For what it's worth, I'm proud of you, for fighting back, for not letting us destroy you completely." After he left, Elena poured us both champagne. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Empty, relieved, sad, angry, all at the same time?" "That's normal. You just ended a decade-long nightmare." My phone rang. This time it was a number I recognized. Margaret Morrison. "June, I have news. The FBI wants to offer you a deal." "What kind of deal?" "They're building a case against several other trustees who may have been involved in similar schemes. If you're willing to testify about your experience, they'll fast-track the restitution process and potentially reduce Jameson's sentence." "Reduce his sentence? Why would I want to do that?" "Because Ramona asked them to reach out. She's been cooperating fully with the investigation, and she's hoping for some leniency for her husband." I thought about Ramona, standing up to her husband and son in that hallway, the woman who'd finally found her voice after decades of silence. "I'll testify," I said, "but not for Jameson, for her." "Understood. There's one more thing. The media attention around this case has been significant. Several news outlets want to interview you." "Absolutely not." "I figured you'd say that. But June, your story could help other women in similar situations. women who are being financially abused by their spouses. I looked around my small apartment, at the charity applications I'd been reviewing, at the freedom I'd fought so hard to win. Let me think about it. After I hung up, Eleanor raised her champagne glass. To June, the woman who refused to be a victim. To June, I agreed, clinking my glass against hers. The woman who learned that sometimes the best revenge is just taking back what was always yours. But even as I said it, I knew the story wasn't over. Not yet. Because my mother had just walked into the building lobby and she was heading for the elevator. The knock on my door came exactly 3 minutes after I saw my mother enter the building. Elena and I exchanged glances. "Want me to stay?" she whispered. "No, this is something I need to handle alone." Eleanor gathered her purse and squeezed my shoulder. "Call me if you need backup." I waited until I heard the elevator close before opening the door. Josephine stood in the hallway, looking exactly like she had 2 years ago when I'd last seen her. Perfectly styled blonde hair, designer handbag, that calculating smile I remembered from childhood. "Hello, June. You look well." "What do you want, Josephine?" "That's no way to greet your mother. May I come in?" I stepped aside reluctantly. She walked into my living room, her eyes taking inventory of everything. "Cozy," she said, though her tone suggested otherwise. "Quite a change from that mansion you were living in." "I like it, it's mine." "Yes, I heard about your situation, the divorce, the trust fund, all of it." She settled onto my couch without being invited. Quite the scandal. "If you're here to gloat, June, darling, I'm here because I'm concerned about you. You've been through a traumatic experience. A betrayal like that, it can affect a person's judgment." "My judgment is fine." "Is it? Because from what I understand, you now have control of $34 million. That's a tremendous responsibility for someone who's been sheltered for so long." There it was, the real reason for her visit. "What do you want, Josephine?" "I want to help you. I know we've had our differences over the years, but I'm still your mother. And mothers look out for their children." "You mean mothers look out for their children's money?" Her smile faltered slightly. "That's unfair. Yes, I've made mistakes. Yes, I wasn't always there when you needed me. But I'm here now. Where were you when Lucas was controlling every penny I spent? Where were you when his father was stealing from my trust? Where were you during the 9 years I was basically a prisoner in my own marriage? I didn't know how bad things were. You didn't want to know. You were too busy with your own life to care about mine." Josephine's composure cracked. "Fine, you want honesty? I'll give you honesty. I need money, June. My investments went south, my condo is in foreclosure, and I'm facing bankruptcy." "And you thought you'd come to me for a bailout?" "I thought my daughter might help her mother in a time of need, especially now that she has more money than she could spend in 10 lifetimes. I sat down across from her. "How much?" $2 million would cover everything. It's a drop in the bucket for you now. $2 million. I know it sounds like a lot, but it sounds like extortion." Her eyes hardened. "Extortion is a strong word. What would you call it? You disappear from my life for years, show up the minute I come into money and expect me to hand over millions? I'd call it family taking care of family." "Family," I laughed. "You want to talk about family? Let me tell you about family. Eleanor, who's been my friend since college and stood by me through everything, that's family. Ramona, who finally found the courage to stand up to her criminal husband, that's family. Terry, my PI, who worked for months to help me gather evidence, that's family. June, you know what's not family? A mother who only calls when she needs something. A mother who couldn't be bothered to check on her daughter during the worst period of her life." Josephine stood up, her mask finally slipping completely. "Fine. Be selfish. Keep your precious money, but don't come crying to me when you realize how alone you really are. I'd rather be alone than surrounded by people who only want to use me. You'll regret this, June. Money doesn't buy happiness, and it certainly doesn't buy love. Maybe not, but it buys freedom, and right now, that's worth more to me than anything else. After she left, I sat in my quiet apartment for a long time. Then I picked up my phone and called Margaret Morrison. Margaret, it's June. I've made a decision about those media interviews. Oh? I want to do them, all of them. I want to tell my story. Are you sure? Once it's out there, I'm sure. There are other women out there going through what I went through. Maybe hearing my story will help them find their own courage. I think that's wonderful, June. Your grandfather would be proud. After I hung up, I walked to my desk and picked up the stack of charity applications I'd been reviewing. Requests from women's shelters, legal aid societies, organisations that helped victims of financial abuse. I had $34 million and no one left to answer to but myself. It was time to put that money to work. My phone buzzed with a text from Eleanor. Dinner tonight. I'm buying. I smiled as I typed back, Actually, I'm buying. I can afford it now. About time. See you at 7. I looked around my small apartment one more time. It wasn't much, but it was honest. It was free. It was mine. And for the first time in 10 years, that was enough. I was the woman they underestimated, the woman they tried to control, manipulate, and destroy. But I was still standing, and if Karma ever needs a secretary, she knows exactly where to find me. I didn't know I could feel invisible in a room full of people, but in the Holland family, I learned to become a ghost before I even left. My name is Roslyn, and for 8 years I was married to a man who forgot I existed the moment his mother entered the room. Tonight, like every other family gathering, I sat in the corner of Scarlett's pristine living room, watching the performance unfold. Caden, darling, sit here beside me. Scarlett patted the velvet cushion next to her wheelchair, her voice dripping with the kind of sweetness that made my teeth ache. Tell me about the Morrison case. My husband, soon-to-be ex-husband, though I didn't know it yet, practically glowed under her attention. We won, of course. The settlement was even bigger than we projected. That's my brilliant boy. Scarlett's eyes swept the room, landing on each of her children like a queen surveying her court. Riley, her eldest daughter, preened from the mahogany bar where she was mixing drinks. Victor, the middle son, looked up from his phone with barely concealed jealousy. Abigail, the baby of the family at 34, giggled from her perch on the ottoman. Then Scarlett's gaze found me. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Roslyn, she said my name like it left a bad taste in her mouth. You're awfully quiet tonight. Just listening, I replied, keeping my voice steady. 8 years of practice had taught me that engaging was dangerous, but silence was somehow worse. Scarlett's lips pursed. Riley was just telling us about her daughter's acceptance to Princeton. Such wonderful news. Family legacy, you know. Riley beamed, raising her martini glass. Emma's the 3rd generation to attend. Some traditions are worth preserving. The unspoken words hung in the air like smoke, unlike some people who can't even produce the next generation. Speaking of family, Abigail chimed in, her voice pitched with false concern. Roslyn, honey, are you still seeing that fertility specialist? Dr. What's his name? My fingers tightened around my wine glass. We're taking a break from treatments. Oh. Abigail's eyes widened with theatrical sympathy. Well, you know what they say. When God closes a door, he opens a window. Maybe it's just not meant to be. Gordon, Riley's husband, cleared his throat. There are always other options. Adoption. Surrogacy. Gordon, Caden's voice cut through the suggestion like a blade. That's enough. For a moment, I thought he was defending me. Then I saw his face, not protective, but embarrassed. Embarrassed by me, by us, by the failure I represented. "Of course, dear," Scarlett said, her voice silk over steel. "We shouldn't dwell on disappointments. Life is too short." Victor snorted from his corner. "Some disappointments last longer than others." "Victor," Scarlett warned, but there was no real heat in it. The conversation moved on, flowing around me like I was a stone in a river. They discussed business deals, vacation plans, Riley's husband's promotion, Abigail's latest charity gala. Normal family things that somehow felt like weapons when wielded by the Hollands. I excused myself to use the bathroom, needing a moment to breathe. The hallway was lined with family portraits, generations of Hollands staring down with the same cold eyes. I paused at the most recent one, taken just after Caden and I married. I stood at the edge of the frame, literally and figuratively on the outside. The bathrooms occupied. I turned to find Brooke, Scarlett's nurse, emerging from the kitchen with a tray of medications. "Oh, that's fine. I was just getting some air." Brooke's smile was kind, the first genuine warmth I'd felt all evening. "I don't blame you. These family dinners can be intense. That's one word for it." She glanced toward the living room, then back at me. "For what it's worth, I think you handle it with more grace than I would." Before I could respond, she was gone, disappearing into Scarlett's bedroom with the medications. I stood there for a moment, surprised by the unexpected kindness. When I returned to the living room, the conversation had shifted to Scarlett's health. She'd been battling cancer for months, though she wielded her illness like another tool of control. "The doctors want to discuss treatment options," she was saying, "but I'm more concerned about other matters, legacy, ensuring the family's future is secure." Her eyes found mine across the room, and something cold slithered down my spine. "After all," she continued, her voice carrying clearly, "we can't let parasites destroy what generations have built." The room fell silent. Riley and Abigail exchanged glances. Victor actually looked up from his phone. Caden stared at his hands, and I realized, with crystalline clarity, that I was the parasite she was talking about. Later, as we drove home in silence, I caught Caden glancing at me in the rearview mirror. Not with love, not with concern, but with something that looked dangerously like calculation. I should have known then that the real performance was just beginning. The ink wasn't dry, and I was already erased. The call came at 6 in the morning. Caden's phone buzzed against the nightstand, and I watched him answer with the kind of alertness that meant family emergency. "What? When?" His voice was sharp, awake instantly. "We'll be right there." "What's wrong?" I asked, already reaching for my robe. "Mum collapsed. They're taking her to Presbyterian." The hospital smelled like disinfectant and desperation. The Holland family had claimed the entire waiting area like conquering generals, their voices echoing off the sterile walls. Riley paced near the windows, her heels clicking an anxious rhythm. Victor slouched in a plastic chair, scrolling through his phone with forced casualness. Abigail dabbed at her eyes with tissues that looked suspiciously dry. "How is she?" Caden asked, rushing to Riley's side. "Stable, for now," Riley said, "but the doctors want to talk to all of us, together." Gordon appeared with coffee, distributing cups like he was hosting a board meeting. Franklin hovered near Abigail, whispering reassurances that sounded more like stock phrases than genuine comfort. "Family only," the doctor said when we crowded into the small consultation room. I started to step back, but Caden's hand found my elbow. "She's family." The doctor nodded and launched into medical terminology that boiled down to one simple truth. Scarlett was dying. Weeks, maybe a month if they were lucky. "We want to take her home," Riley said immediately. "She'd hate being here." "We can arrange hospice care," the doctor replied. "Make her comfortable." The ride back to the Holland estate was silent, except for the sound of Abigail sniffling. Scarlett had insisted on being discharged immediately, and now she held court from her hospital bed, which had been moved to the main living room like a throne. "Gather around," she said, her voice weaker but still commanding. "All of you." We formed a semicircle around her bed. Riley and Victor flanked her right side, Abigail and Franklin on the left. Caden and I stood at the foot, and I noticed how he positioned himself slightly in front of me, like a shield. "I don't have time for sentiment," Scarlett began, "so I'll be direct. This family has built something worth preserving. Generations of hard work, sacrifice, and smart decisions." Her eyes swept over each of her children, lingering on their faces with something that might have been pride. "But legacy isn't just about money. It's about bloodline, about ensuring the right people carry our name forward." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. I felt Caden tense beside me. "Caden," Scarlett's voice cut through the silence like a scalpel, "you're my heir, the one I've groomed to lead this family, but I need to know you understand what that means." "Of course, Mum. It means choosing family over everything else. It means understanding that some relationships are investments, and others—" Her eyes flicked to me, then back to him. "Others are liabilities." Riley stepped closer to the bed. "Mum, what are you saying?" "I'm saying that my will reflects my values, and my values prioritize family, real family, blood family." Scarlett's breathing was laboured, but her words were crystal clear. "Caden, you have a choice to make. Your inheritance, your position as head of this family, depends on it." The silence stretched like a taut wire. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. "What choice?" Caden's voice was barely a whisper. Scarlett smiled, and it was the coldest thing I'd ever seen. "Divorce her or lose everything." The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually stepped backward, my hand finding the wall for support. "Mom," Abigail gasped, "you can't be serious." "I'm dying, dear. I've never been more serious about anything in my life." Riley's eyes gleamed. "It makes sense. The family assets should stay in the family." "This is insane." I finally found my voice. "Caden, tell her this is insane." But when I looked at my husband, the man I'd loved for 10 years, married for 8, I saw something that made my blood turn to ice. He wasn't looking at me with shock or outrage or even sympathy. He was calculating. "How long do I have to decide?" he asked. The question hung in the air like poison gas. Not, "This is ridiculous, Mom." Not, "I won't choose between my wife and money." Just, "How long?" 24 hours, Scarlett said. "The lawyers are already drawing up the papers." What papers?" I demanded. Victor spoke up from his corner, his voice almost gleeful. "Divorce papers, obviously, and a new will that cuts you out completely if Caden doesn't sign them." "Caden!" I turned to him, searching his face for any sign of the man I'd married. "Say something." He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw my answer in his eyes before he spoke. "I need some air," he said, and walked out of the room. Riley's laugh was like breaking glass. "Well, that was easier than expected." "The poor dear," Abigail cooed, but her eyes were bright with malicious excitement. "This must be so hard for you, Roslyn, but really it's for the best. You'll be free to find someone who can give you what you need." "What I need?" My voice sounded strange, distant. "Children, dear. A real family. Caden needs to think about his legacy now." Gordon cleared his throat. "There will be a settlement, of course. Scarlett's not unreasonable." "How generous," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. Caden returned an hour later with an envelope. His hands shook as he held it out to me, but his voice was firm. "I'm sorry, Roslyn, but I can't lose everything my family built." I stared at the envelope, then at him. "Everything your family built? What about everything we built?" "We didn't build anything," he said quietly. "We just existed." I took the papers with numb fingers. The room was so quiet I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway. "Where will you go?" Abigail asked, and I could hear the fake concern dripping from every word. "That's not your problem anymore," I said, standing up. "Is it?" As I walked toward the door, Brooke appeared with Scarlett's evening medications. She took one look at my face and stepped aside. "I'm sorry," she whispered as I passed. She was the only one who was. By dawn, she was gone. I was out of the family, but tethered to its fate in a way none of them would suspect. The call came at 2 a.m, 3 days after I'd signed the divorce papers. I was in my temporary apartment, surrounded by boxes I hadn't bothered to unpack, when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. "Hello?" "Roslyn, it's Brooke, Scarlett's nurse." I sat up in bed, instantly alert. "What's wrong?" "She's asking for you. She's not doing well, and she keeps saying your name. I know it's strange given everything that happened, but I'll be right there." The Holland estate looked different at night. Smaller somehow, less imposing. Most of the windows were dark except for the main living room where Scarlett's bed glowed under soft lamplight. Brooke met me at the front door. "Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would." "Neither was I. She's been agitated all evening, kept asking where you were, if anyone had called you. The family thinks it's the medication, but—" She shrugged. "I've seen a lot of people die. Sometimes they need to make things right." The living room was empty except for Scarlett and the machines keeping her comfortable. She looked smaller than I remembered, fragile in a way that seemed impossible for someone who had wielded so much power. "Roslyn," her voice was barely a whisper. "You came. Brooke said you wanted to see me." "Sit, please." She gestured weakly to the chair beside her bed. "I need to tell you something." I sat, keeping my distance. "What is it?" I was wrong. The words came out in a rush, like she'd been holding them back. "About you, about what I did." "Scarlett!" "No, let me finish. I don't have long." She struggled to sit up straighter. "I spent so many years protecting this family, building walls, keeping out anyone I thought might hurt us. But I became the one doing the hurting." Her eyes were clearer than I'd seen them in months. "You were good to Caden, good to all of us, even when we didn't deserve it. And I destroyed that because I was afraid." "Afraid of what?" "Of losing control, of admitting that maybe bloodline isn't everything, that maybe the family needed someone like you more than it needed someone like me." I stared at her, this woman who had made my life hell for 8 years, now lying broken and regretful in her hospital bed. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I need to fix what I broke." She reached for something on her nightstand, a thick envelope. "I called my lawyer tonight, had him come here." "Scarlett, what did you do?" "What I should have done years ago." She held out the envelope with shaking hands. "I changed my will. A codicil. Legal and binding." I didn't take the envelope. "I don't want your money. This isn't about what you want. It's about what's right." Her voice grew stronger, more like the commanding woman I remembered. "Take it." Against my better judgment, I opened the envelope. The legal language was dense, but one section stood out in bold letters. Trustee and sole administrator of estate. "I don't understand." "You're the trustee, Roslyn. Everything, the house, the businesses, the investments, all of it goes into a trust, and you control it." My hands started shaking. "Scarlett, this is insane. Your children—" "My children will get their inheritance, but only if you approve it, only if you think they deserve it." She gripped my wrist with surprising strength. "You're the only one with a conscience left in this family. They'll contest this. They'll fight it." "Let them try. I had 3 lawyers review it. It's ironclad." She smiled, and for the first time since I'd known her, it looked genuine. "Besides, you were there when I signed it. You're the witness." I was the witness. You're here now, aren't you? Brooke, she called out, and the nurse appeared immediately. Bring Lucia. Tell her it's time. Lucia's here? I asked. I called her after I called you. She's been waiting in the kitchen. My friend and lawyer appeared in the doorway, looking as confused as I felt. Roslyn, what are you doing here? Witnessing a codicil, Scarlett said firmly. Both of you, come here. The next 20 minutes passed in a blur of signatures and legal formalities. Lucia kept shooting me questioning looks, but I was too stunned to respond. Scarlett signed with a steady hand, then had both Lucia and me witness the document. There, she said, sinking back into her pillows. It's done. Scarlett, I started, but she held up a hand. I know you hate me. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need you to promise me something. What? Don't let them destroy each other. They're going to be angry, desperate. They'll turn on each other like wolves. Tears were streaming down her face now. But they're still my children. Don't let my mistakes destroy them completely. I looked at this woman who had tormented me, who had cost me my marriage, who was now handing me the power to control her family's entire future. I can't promise that. Then promise me you'll be fair, that you'll remember the good in them, even when they can't remember it themselves. Before I could answer, her breathing changed, became laboured, desperate. Brooke, I called out. The nurse rushed in, checked Scarlett's vitals, then looked at me with sad eyes. It won't be long now. Scarlett's hand found mine. You may be the only one with a conscience left, she whispered. Don't lose it. She died an hour later, just as the sun was rising. Brooke called the family, and I slipped out the back door before they arrived. I sat in my car in the driveway, staring at the envelope in my hands. Inside was a document that would change everything. That would give me power over the people who had destroyed my life. Lucia knocked on my window. Roslyn, are you okay? I rolled down the window. Did you know what she was planning? Not until tonight. She called me at midnight, said it was urgent. Lucia studied my face. Are you going to be okay with this? I looked back at the house, where lights were starting to come on as the family gathered to mourn their matriarch. They had no idea what was waiting for them. I don't know, I said honestly, but I guess we're about to find out. They'd learned to hunt in a pack, but they had no idea the rules had changed. The funeral was everything Scarlett would have wanted, expensive, well-attended, and perfectly orchestrated. I watched from the back of the church as the Holland children played their parts. Riley, stoic and dignified in her black Chanel suit. Victor, uncomfortable in his too-tight tie. Abigail, dabbing at her eyes with a lace handkerchief that matched her dress. Caden delivered the eulogy. He spoke about legacy, about family values, about a woman who built an empire through sheer force of will. He didn't mention me once, which was probably for the best. I left before the burial. You sure you don't want to come back to the house? Lucia asked as we stood in the church parking lot. The will reading is scheduled for tomorrow. I'm sure. I watched the funeral procession form, black cars lined up like dominoes. Let them have their moment. Roslyn, you know they're going to be furious, vindictive, ready to tear me apart. I shrugged. Nothing new there. That evening, my phone started ringing. First Riley, then Victor, then Abigail. I let them all go to voicemail. Riley's message was crisp and businesslike. Roslyn, I know we've had our differences, but we need to discuss Mum's arrangements. Call me back. Victor's was more direct. What the hell are you playing at? Call me. Abigail's was pure manipulation wrapped in fake sweetness. Oh, honey, I know this must be so hard for you, losing Mum right after the divorce. We should talk as family. I deleted them all. The next morning, I met Lucia at her office before heading to the law firm handling Scarlett's estate. You ready for this? She asked, straightening her blazer. Are they ever ready for something like this? I meant you. I thought about that. Was I ready to face the people who had systematically destroyed my marriage, my self-worth, my place in the world? Was I ready to hold their financial futures in my hands? Let's find out. The conference room at Morrison, Blake & Associates was all mahogany and leather, designed to intimidate. The Holland family had claimed one side of the massive table like they were preparing for battle. Riley sat at the head, naturally assuming leadership. Victor slouched beside her, scrolling through his phone. Abigail perched on the edge of her chair, whispering to Franklin. Caden sat at the far end, staring at his hands. He looked up when I entered, and something flickered across his face. Guilt, maybe, or regret. I couldn't tell any more. Roslyn, Riley's voice was ice-cold polite. How unexpected. The deceased requested her presence, said Mr. Morrison, the lead attorney. He was a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Shall we begin? Of course, Riley said, settling back in her chair with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what was coming. Morrison opened a thick folder and began reading in the monotone voice lawyers perfect in law school. The standard provisions came first: charitable donations, bequests to long-time employees, Brooke receiving a generous sum that made me smile. Then came the meat of it. To my children, Riley, Caden, Victor and Abigail, I leave equal shares of my estate to be divided as follows. Riley actually smiled. Victor put down his phone. Abigail squeezed Franklin's hand. Morrison continued reading dollar amounts that made my head spin. The house, the investment portfolio, the business interests, all divided equally among the 4 siblings. Well, Riley said when he paused. That's settled then. Actually, Morrison said, clearing his throat, there's a codicil added 3 days before Mrs. Holland's death. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. A what? Victor demanded. A codicil, an amendment to the will. Morrison's voice grew more formal. It reads as follows. Having reconsidered the distribution of my estate, I hereby establish the Scarlett Holland Family Trust, with all assets previously bequeathed to my children to be held in said trust. A trust, Riley's voice was sharp. What kind of trust? Morrison continued reading. The trust shall be administered by a sole trustee who shall have complete discretion over all distributions, investments and management decisions. Who's the trustee? Caden asked, though something in his voice suggested he already knew. Morrison looked directly at me. Roslyn Evans, formerly Roslyn Holland. The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear the air conditioning humming, the distant sound of traffic, my own heartbeat. That's impossible, Riley said finally. I'm afraid it's quite legal, Morrison replied. The codicil was properly witnessed and executed according to state law. Witnessed by whom? Victor demanded. Ms. Evans herself and Lucia Martinez, attorney at law. All eyes turned to me. I sat perfectly still, my hands folded in my lap, saying nothing. This is insane, Abigail whispered. She's not even family anymore. The codicil was executed before the divorce was finalized, Morrison explained. At the time of signing, Ms. Evans was still legally a Holland. Riley stood up so fast her chair rolled backward. We'll contest this, obviously. That's your right, Morrison said calmly, though I should mention that Mrs. Holland anticipated this possibility. She included a clause stating that any beneficiary who contests the will forfeits their inheritance entirely. So we get nothing? Victor's voice cracked. You get whatever Miss Evans approves, Morrison clarified. She has sole discretion over all distributions from the trust. The room erupted. Riley started shouting about legal challenges. Victor threatened to call his own lawyer. Abigail burst into tears. Franklin and Gordon tried to calm their wives while clearly panicking themselves. Through it all, Caden just stared at me. "Why?" he asked quietly, his voice cutting through the chaos. I looked at him, this man who had chosen money over love, who had handed me divorce papers without a fight, who had stood by while his family destroyed me piece by piece. "You'll have to ask your mother," I said, standing up. "Oh, wait, you can't." I walked toward the door, but Riley blocked my path. "You manipulative bitch," she hissed. "You planned this whole thing." "Did I?" I met her eyes steadily. "Or did you all just assume that destroying someone's life wouldn't have consequences?" "We'll fight this," she said. "We'll tie this up in court for years." "Good luck with that." I stepped around her. "But remember, every day you spend fighting is another day you don't get a penny." As I reached the door, Caden called out, "Roslyn, wait." I turned back. "What do you want?" he asked. "Money? Revenge? What's it going to take?" I looked at all of them. These people who had made me feel worthless, invisible, less than human. They were staring at me with desperation now, hanging on my every word. "I want you to remember this feeling," I said. "The feeling of having your future decided by someone else. The feeling of being powerless." I walked out, leaving them in chaos behind me. In the elevator, Lucia squeezed my shoulder. "How do you feel?" I thought about it as we descended. Like I'm finally visible again. Their faces were drained of colour, the same as when they had tried to erase me. The second will reading happened exactly 1 week later. Morrison had called to say there were additional provisions that needed to be addressed, and the family was required to attend. This time I arrived early. I wanted to watch them walk in, to see their faces when they realised I was already there, already in control. Riley entered first, her usual confidence replaced by something harder, more desperate. She'd lost weight in the past week, and her perfectly styled hair couldn't hide the dark circles under her eyes. "Roslyn." She nodded curtly, taking a seat across from me instead of ignoring me like usual. Victor came in next, looking like he hadn't slept. His shirt was wrinkled, his tie crooked. "This is bullshit," he muttered to no one in particular. Abigail appeared in the doorway, clutching Franklin's arm. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and she kept glancing at me like I might disappear if she looked away. Caden was last. He paused when he saw me, and for a moment I thought he might turn around and leave. Instead, he took the seat at the far end of the table, as far from everyone as possible. "Thank you all for coming," Morrison began, opening a new folder. "As I mentioned, there are additional provisions in Mrs. Holland's will that need to be addressed." "More surprises?" Riley's voice was bitter. "In a manner of speaking." Morrison adjusted his glasses. "The trust I mentioned last week comes with specific conditions that weren't outlined in the initial reading." He began reading from a document I'd never seen before. Apparently, Scarlett had been even more thorough than I'd realised. "The trustee shall have the authority to distribute funds for the following purposes: education, medical expenses, housing, and business investments. However, all distributions must be approved in writing and are subject to the trustee's discretion based on the recipient's character and conduct." Character and conduct? Victor laughed harshly. "What is this, Sunday school?" Morrison continued. "Furthermore, any beneficiary who engages in behaviour deemed detrimental to the family's reputation or values may have their access to the trust suspended indefinitely." "Who determines what's detrimental?" Riley demanded. Morrison looked at me. "The trustee." The room fell silent. I could feel their eyes on me, calculating, measuring, trying to figure out what I wanted. "There's more," Morrison said. "Mrs. Holland has established specific guidelines for each beneficiary." He pulled out individual sealed envelopes, each marked with a name. "Riley Holland Tucker," he read from the first envelope. "Your mother noted your ambitious nature. Your access to the trust is contingent upon demonstrating genuine remorse for past actions and a commitment to treating all family members with respect. Riley's face went white. Past actions? Your mother was quite specific about the emotional abuse you inflicted on certain family members. Morrison's voice was clinical. She felt this needed to be addressed before any distributions could be made. "This is insane," Riley whispered. Morrison moved to the next envelope. "Victor Holland, your mother expressed concern about your gambling debts and poor financial decisions. Your access to the trust requires completion of financial counselling and a formal apology to family members you've wronged." Victor shot to his feet. "She can't do this! She's dead!" "Sit down, Victor," Morrison said calmly. "There's more." He opened Abigail's envelope. "Abigail Holland Wise, your mother noted your tendency toward gossip and manipulation. Your access requires a written commitment to cease spreading rumours and malicious talk about family members." Abigail started crying. I didn't mean." "And finally," Morrison said, opening the last envelope, "Caden Holland." Caden didn't look up from his hands. "Your mother's instructions for you are the most detailed." She wrote, and I quote, "My son chose money over love, inheritance over integrity. He will receive nothing from this trust until he can demonstrate that he understands the value of loyalty and the cost of betrayal." The silence stretched like a taut wire. Caden's shoulders shook, but he didn't make a sound. "What does that mean exactly?" Franklin asked, his voice barely a whisper. Morrison looked at me again. "It means the trustee will determine when, if ever, Mr. Holland has met his mother's conditions." Riley stood up slowly. "So, you're saying that she pointed at me, "gets to decide whether we ever see a penny of our inheritance?" "That's correct." "And if we don't meet her conditions?" "Then you receive nothing." Victor kicked his chair. "This is extortion." "This is your mother's will," Morrison replied, "legally executed and binding." "How much?" Abigail asked suddenly. "How much is in the trust?" Morrison consulted his papers. "Approximately $47 million, plus real estate and business interests valued at another $30 million. The number hung in the air like a physical presence. $77 million, more money than any of them had imagined. "And she controls all of it?" Riley's voice was barely audible. "Every penny." Riley turned to me, her face a mask of barely controlled rage. "What do you want, Roslyn? Name your price." "My price?" I stood up, smoothing down my skirt. "I want you to remember how it felt when you told me I wasn't really family, when you laughed about my infertility, when you stood by and watched your brother choose money over his marriage." "That's not—" Abigail started. "I want you to remember," I continued, "how it felt to be powerless, to have your future decided by people who didn't care about you." "We get it," Victor snarled. "You're angry, but this is our inheritance, our family's money." "Your family's money," I repeated. "Funny how I'm suddenly family again when you need something from me." Caden finally looked up. "What do you want me to do, Roslyn? Grovel, beg, tell me what you want." I studied his face. This man I'd loved, who'd thrown me away like garbage when it became inconvenient to keep me. "I want you to understand what you did," I said quietly. "I want you to feel what I felt when you handed me those divorce papers, when you chose them over me without even hesitating." "I made a mistake," he said. "I know that now." "Do you? Or are you just saying that because I hold the purse strings?" He didn't answer, which was answer enough. I gathered my purse and stood. "Mr. Morrison, please send me copies of all the documentation. I'll need time to review everything before making any decisions." "Of course. And the family's requests for distributions?" I looked around the table at their desperate faces. "I'll be in touch." As I walked toward the door, Riley called out, Rosalind, please, we can work something out. We can... I turned back one last time. You know what the funny thing is? Your mother was right about one thing. Family should come first. Too bad you never learned that lesson when it mattered. I left them sitting there, staring at the ruins of their expectations. In the parking garage, Lucia was waiting by my car. How did it go? Better than I expected. I unlocked the car, then paused. Lucia, am I a terrible person for enjoying this? She considered the question seriously. After what they put you through, I'd say you're human. That's what I'm afraid of. They finally heard the click of the cage and realized I held the key. The first one to break was Abigail. She showed up at my apartment on a Tuesday morning, clutching a box of pastries from the expensive bakery downtown. Her makeup was perfect, but I could see the desperation in her eyes. Roslyn, honey, I brought your favourites, those little lemon tarts you always liked at the family brunches. I hadn't invited her in, but she pushed past me anyway, settling herself on my couch like we were old friends. Abigail, what do you want? I want to apologise. She set the pastries on my coffee table with shaking hands. For everything. For the things I said, the way I treated you. I was horrible. Yes, you were. She flinched at my bluntness. I know you have every right to hate me, but I need you to understand. I have children, Roslyn. 2 beautiful babies who need their college funds, their future secured. You should have thought about that before you spent 8 years making my life hell. I know. Tears started flowing, and for once they looked real. But they're innocent in all this. They don't deserve to suffer because their mother was a bitch. I sat down across from her. Tell me about the gossip, Abigail. What? The rumours you spread about me? The things you whispered at dinner parties, at charity events? Tell me about those. Her face crumpled. I don't know what you mean. The fertility clinic visits. How did everyone know about those? I never told anyone except Caden. She looked down at her hands. Caden mentioned it once, and I might have repeated it. Might have? Okay, I did. I told people, but it wasn't malicious. I swear, it was just conversation. Conversation. I leaned back. What else was just conversation? Roslyn, please. The time you told everyone at Riley's birthday party that I was probably faking the miscarriages for attention. Was that conversation too? Her face went white. You heard that? I heard a lot of things, Abigail. I was just invisible enough that people forgot I was there. She started sobbing then, ugly tears that ruined her makeup. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I was jealous, okay? You were everything I wasn't. Educated, sophisticated, independent. I felt threatened. So you decided to destroy me. I didn't think. No, you didn't think. None of you did. I stood up. You can keep the pastries. I'm not hungry. Roslyn, wait. What about my children? What about their future? I paused at the door. What about it? Can you find it in your heart to help them, even if you can't forgive me? I'll think about it. She left, but not before leaving her business card with a handwritten note on the back. Please, they're all I have. Victor came next 2 days later. No pastries, no tears, just raw desperation and barely contained rage. Cut the shit, Roslyn, what's it going to take? He'd cornered me in the parking garage of my building, blocking my path to the elevator. Excuse me? You want an apology? Fine. I'm sorry I called you a gold-digging bitch. I'm sorry I said you were probably screwing around because Caden couldn't satisfy you. I'm sorry for every shitty thing I ever said. There. Happy? That's not how apologies work, Victor. Then tell me how they work. He slammed his hand against the concrete wall. Tell me what you want so I can get my life back. Your life? You mean the life where you gambled away your trust fund and had to borrow money from your mother to pay your debts? His face darkened. How do you know about that? I know a lot of things, like how you've been stealing from the family business for years. Small amounts, nothing anyone would notice, but it adds up. That's not. Scarlett knew Victor. She knew everything. Why do you think she put conditions on your inheritance? He sagged against the wall. I can change. I can get help. Can you? Because from where I'm standing, you look like a man who's about to threaten me if I don't give you what you want. I would never, wouldn't you? I stepped closer. What were you planning to do if I said no? Hurt me? Intimidate me? Maybe break into my apartment and look for something to blackmail me with? His silence was answer enough. Get help, Victor, real help. Then maybe we can talk. Riley was the most strategic. She waited a full week before making her move, then invited me to lunch at the country club, where she knew I'd feel out of place. You look well, she said as I sat down at her table. Divorce agrees with you. Cut to the chase, Riley. What do you want? I want to make a deal. She signalled the waiter for wine. A business proposition. I'm listening. You release half the trust funds to me, and I'll make sure the others fall in line. No more drama, no more fighting, just a clean split. And why would I do that? Because you're not stupid, Roslyn. You know this can't last forever. Eventually, they'll find a way to contest the will, or you'll get tired of playing puppet master. This way, everyone wins. Everyone except you, you mean? You get your money, but you lose control over your siblings. Her smile was sharp. I never had control over them anyway. They're too weak, too emotional. But you understand power. Do I? You're here, aren't you? You could have taken the money and disappeared, but you stayed. You want to watch us squirm. I sipped my water, considering. Maybe I do. Then let's make it interesting. Give me my share, and I'll help you make the others really suffer. I know all their secrets, all their weaknesses. You'd betray your own family. They're not my family, they're competition. She leaned forward, just like you were. And look how that turned out for me. Her confidence faltered slightly. This is different. Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, you're just another desperate person begging for money. I stood to leave, but she grabbed my wrist. Don't make me your enemy, Roslyn. You won't like the consequences. I looked down at her hand on my arm, then back at her face. Are you threatening me, Riley? I'm warning you. I have resources, connections. I can make your life very difficult. More difficult than it already was, when your family spent 8 years trying to drive me away. I pulled my arm free. Do your worst. I'm not afraid of you anymore. As I walked away, I heard her call out, "This isn't over!" But the last one to come was the one I'd been waiting for. Caden appeared at my door on a Friday evening, holding a bottle of wine and looking like he hadn't slept in days. "Can we talk?" he asked. "Please?" I let him in, but I didn't make it easy. "Nice place," he said, looking around my small apartment. "Cozy. It's what I can afford on my secretary's salary." He winced. "Roslyn, Why are you here, Caden?" He set the wine on my counter, then turned to face me. "I want to apologise, really apologise. Not because I want something from you, but because I owe you that much." "Go ahead. I was a coward. I let my family poison me against you, and when it mattered most, I chose money over love. I chose security over the woman I married." His voice broke. "I threw away the best thing in my life because I was afraid of losing everything else. And now you've lost it all anyway." "I know, and I deserve it." He ran his hands through his hair. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect you to give me a penny. I needed you to know that I know what I did." I studied his face, looking for signs of manipulation, of calculation. But all I saw was genuine regret. "Do you love me, Caden?" The question seemed to surprise him. "What? Do you love me, or do you love the idea of getting your inheritance back?" "I love you," he said without hesitation. I never stopped loving you." "Then why didn't you fight for me?" "Because I'm weak. Because I was raised to believe that family money was more important than anything else. Because I'm my mother's son, and she taught me that love was a luxury we couldn't afford. And now I know she was wrong. Now I know that all the money in the world isn't worth losing you." I walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. "It's too late, Caden." "I know. Even if I wanted to forgive you, even if I wanted to try again, how could I trust you? How could I ever believe that you wouldn't choose money over me again?" "You couldn't," he said quietly. "I broke that trust. I broke us." I turned back to him. "Then why are you here?" "Because I needed to tell you the truth. Because you deserved to hear it." He moved toward the door. "And because I wanted you to know that whatever you decide to do with the trust, I'll accept it, even if it means I get nothing. Even if it means you lose everything." I already lost everything that mattered. After he left, I sat in my empty apartment, surrounded by the silence I'd grown to appreciate. My phone buzzed with a text from Brooke. "Thank you for the surgery fund. Mum's doing great. You're an angel." I smiled, remembering the check I'd written that morning. Some people deserved help. Some people had earned kindness. But the Hollands, they were still learning what it meant to beg, and I was just getting started. Revenge was a dish served cold, but I didn't expect to find it so bitter. The family meeting was Riley's idea. She'd called everyone together at the estate. Neutral ground, she said, though we all knew she just wanted the home field advantage. I arrived to find them arranged around Scarlett's old dining table, like generals planning a war. "Thank you for coming," Riley said as I took the seat at the head of the table, Scarlett's old spot. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. "Let's get this over with," I said. "What do you want?" "We want to make a proposal," Riley began, but Victor cut her off. "We want our money," he snarled. "This whole charade has gone on long enough." "Victor," Abigail hissed, We agreed to kiss her ass and beg like dogs. I'm done with that." Riley shot him a warning look. "What Victor means is that we think it's time to find a solution that works for everyone." "I'm listening." "We've retained legal counsel," she continued. "Our lawyer says there are grounds to contest the will. Undue influence, mental incapacity." "Your mother was sharp as a tack until the day she died," I interrupted. "Was she? Because this trust arrangement seems pretty convenient for you. The grieving daughter-in-law, manipulating a dying woman. Careful, Riley. Or what? You'll cut off my allowance?" She leaned forward. "Here's the thing, Roslyn. We don't need your permission to fight this. We can tie this up in court for years, cost you hundreds of thousands in legal fees, make your life a living hell." "You already did that, for 8 years. "This is different. This is war." Caden finally spoke up. "Riley, stop. This isn't helping." "Helping what? Helping you get back in her good graces?" Riley's voice was venomous. "Wake up, Caden. She's never going to forgive you. She's going to dangle that money in front of us forever, watching us dance like trained monkeys." "Maybe that's what you deserve," I said quietly. The room exploded. Victor slammed his fist on the table. Abigail started crying. Franklin and Gordon tried to calm everyone down while clearly panicking themselves. "Enough!" Riley's voice cut through the chaos. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to release our inheritances, all of them, or we're going to destroy you." "How?" "We know things about you, Roslyn. Things that might interest the IRS, the State Bar Association, maybe even the police." I felt ice in my veins. "What things?" Victor pulled out his phone, scrolling through photos. "Remember your little side business? The one you ran out of the house while you were married to Caden? I don't know what you're talking about. The consulting work, the clients you met with, the cash payments that never got reported." He showed me a photo of me accepting an envelope from a man I barely remembered. Tax evasion is a federal crime. That was legitimate freelance work. Can you prove that? Because we have photos, bank records, testimony from people who say you offered them services that weren't exactly professional. My blood turned to ice. They were talking about the small marketing consulting I'd done to have some independence, some money of my own, completely legal, but I'd been sloppy with the paperwork. You're bluffing. Are we? Riley smiled coldly. We also have some interesting information about your relationship with Mum's doctor. All those late-night visits, the private conversations, makes a person wonder if you were influencing her medication, her mental state. That's insane. Is it? Because we have security footage of you entering and leaving her room at all hours. We have records of you meeting with her lawyer multiple times. It paints a very interesting picture of manipulation and elder abuse. Abigail leaned forward, her tears suddenly dry. We don't want to hurt you, Roslyn, but we will if we have to. I looked around the table at their faces, desperate, vindictive, united in their hatred of me. For the first time since this started, I felt truly afraid. What do you want? Full release of all trust funds, Riley said. Immediate transfer to our individual accounts. You keep whatever Mum left you directly, but the trust gets dissolved. And if I refuse? Then we go to the authorities, we file criminal charges, we make sure everyone knows what kind of person you really are. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway, counting down the seconds until I had to make a choice. I need time to think. You have 24 hours, Victor said. After that, we start making phone calls. I stood up, my legs shaky. Fine. As I walked toward the door, Caden called out, Roslyn, wait. I turned back. Don't let them do this to you. Fight back. Riley laughed. Fight back? With what? She's got nothing on us. Doesn't she? Caden's voice was quiet, but there was something dangerous in it. Because I seem to remember a lot of family secrets that might interest people, like Victor's gambling debts to some very unsavoury characters, or Riley's affair with her business partner, or Abigail's prescription drug problem. Caden, Riley warned, or the fact that Mum knew about all of it, every dirty secret, every lie, every crime. Why do you think she changed her will? The room went dead silent. She didn't trust any of you, he continued. She knew you'd destroy each other the moment she was gone. That's why she gave everything to Roslyn, because she was the only one with any integrity left. Shut up, Caden, Victor snarled. Make me. Caden stood up, and for the first time since I'd known him, he looked like a man worth fighting for. You want to threaten Roslyn? Go ahead, but remember, I know where all the bodies are buried, and unlike you, I've got nothing left to lose. Riley's face was white with rage. You're choosing her over your own family. I'm choosing what's right over what's easy, something I should have done years ago. I stared at him, this man who had broken my heart, who was now trying to protect me from the wolves he'd helped create. It's too late, Caden, I said softly. I know, but that doesn't mean I can't try to do the right thing now. I left them there, arguing among themselves, their united front crumbling as quickly as it had formed. In the car, my hands shook as I started the engine. My phone rang before I'd even left the driveway. Lucia's name flashed on the screen. They called you, didn't they? I said, without preamble. Riley's lawyer just contacted me. They're serious, Roslyn. They have enough to cause real trouble. What do you think I should do? Honestly, give them the money. It's not worth going to prison over. I drove home in silence, thinking about Scarlett's last words. Don't let them destroy each other. But what if they were determined to destroy me instead? That night, I sat in my apartment, staring at the trust documents spread across my coffee table. $77 million. The power to control their lives, the ability to make them pay for everything they'd done to me. And all I felt was empty. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. 24 hours, don't forget. I deleted it and poured myself a glass of wine. Tomorrow I would have to decide, give them what they wanted and let them win, or fight back and risk losing everything. But tonight, I just wanted to remember what it felt like before I became someone who held people's lives in her hands, before I became someone who enjoyed watching them suffer, before I became someone I wasn't sure I recognized anymore. Their empire is in my hands, and for once, I don't owe any of them an explanation. I called the meeting for noon the next day, not at the estate, not at the lawyer's office, but at the downtown conference room I'd rented specifically for this moment, neutral ground that I controlled. They filed in looking like condemned prisoners, Riley with her lawyer in tow, Victor fidgeting with his phone, Abigail clutching Franklin's arm, Caden bringing up the rear with his shoulders squared like he was walking into battle. "Thank you all for coming," I said, standing at the head of the polished table. "I've made my decision." Riley's lawyer, a sharp-faced woman in an expensive suit, opened her briefcase. "Before you say anything, Ms. Evans, my client wants you to know that we're prepared to file charges this afternoon if—" "Shut up," I said calmly. The lawyer blinked. "Excuse me?" I said, "Shut up! You don't get to threaten me in my meeting." I looked at Riley. "You want to play hardball? Fine, let's play." I pulled out my own folder, thick with documents Lucia and I had spent all night preparing. "Victor, let's start with you. Those gambling debts you mentioned, the ones to Tony Marconi's crew. I have bank records showing you've been skimming from the family business for 3 years to pay them off. That's embezzlement." Victor's face went white. "You can't prove—" "I can prove everything. Your mother kept meticulous records. She knew about every theft, every forged signature, every fake invoice." I slid a stack of papers across the table. "She was building a case against you when she died." "That's impossible." "Is it? Because I also have recordings. Your mother was very thorough in her final months." I pressed play on my phone, and Scarlett's voice filled the room. "Victor thinks I don't know about the money he's been stealing. The boy always was too stupid to cover his tracks properly." Victor slumped in his chair like a deflated balloon. "Riley," I continued, "your affair with Marcus from your firm, the one you've been having for 2 years. I have photos, hotel receipts, text messages. Gordon might be interested to see them." Gordon's head snapped up. "What affair?" Riley's lawyer started to object, but I cut her off. "And Abigail, those prescription pills you've been selling to your book club friends? That's drug trafficking, federal charges." "I never—" Abigail started. "OxyContin, Adderall, Xanax. You've been raiding your mother's medicine cabinet and selling them to fund your shopping addiction. I have video evidence." The room was dead silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. "So here's what's going to happen," I said, settling back in my chair. "You're going to drop all threats against me. You're going to accept whatever I decide to give you from the trust, and you're going to do it with gratitude." "Or what?" Riley's voice was barely a whisper. "Or I release everything to the police, the IRS, and the local news stations. Your reputations will be destroyed, your marriages will end, and you'll spend the next decade in court fighting criminal charges." Riley's lawyer cleared her throat. "My client would like to discuss—" "Your client can discuss it with someone who cares. This meeting is over." I stood up, but Caden's voice stopped me. "What about me?" I turned to look at him. "What about you? You didn't threaten me. You didn't pull out any dirt on me. Why?" "Because you don't get threats, Caden. You get something worse." "Which is?" "Nothing. You get absolutely nothing. No money, no second chances, no redemption arc. You chose money over love, and now you get neither." His face crumpled. "Roslyn, please." "Please what? Please forgive you. Please pretend the last 8 years didn't happen. Please give you another chance to break my heart." "I love you." "No, you don't. You love the idea of me. You love what I represented. Stability, respectability, someone to make you look good. But you never loved me enough to fight for me when it mattered. I walked toward the door, then paused. The rest of you will receive your distributions according to your mother's conditions. Riley, when you complete anger management and make genuine amends, you'll get your share. Victor, after you finish gambling addiction treatment and pay back what you stole, Abigail, when you complete rehab and community service. And if we refuse, Riley asked, then you get nothing, forever. I left them sitting there in stunned silence. 3 weeks passed before the first one cracked. Abigail called, sobbing, asking for the name of a good rehab facility. I gave her 3 options and told her I'd pay for whichever one she chose. Victor took longer, 2 months before he finally admitted he needed help. I arranged for the gambling addiction counselling and set up a payment plan for him to repay the embezzled funds. Riley held out the longest, almost 6 months. When she finally called, her voice was different, smaller. I want to apologise, she said, really apologise, not because I want the money, but because I need to say it. We met at a coffee shop downtown. She looked older, worn down by months of fighting a battle she couldn't win. I was cruel to you, she said without preamble. I was jealous and insecure, and I took it out on you because you were an easy target. Why? Because you had something I never did. You had Caden's love, real love, and I couldn't stand it. I've been married to Gordon for 15 years, and he's never looked at me the way Caden looked at you. He stopped looking at me that way long before the divorce, because we poisoned him against you. We made him choose between love and loyalty, and we knew he'd choose loyalty because that's how we raised him. She wiped her eyes. We destroyed something beautiful because we couldn't stand to see someone else have it. I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation, but all I saw was genuine regret. I'm not giving you the money because you apologized, I said finally. I know. I'm giving it to you because your mother wanted you to have it. Despite everything, she loved you. Riley nodded, tears streaming down her face. Thank you. As for Caden, he never called, never begged, never pleaded, never tried to manipulate his way back into my good graces. I heard through Lucia that he'd moved to Seattle, started over with a small law practice. He sent 1 letter, which I threw away unopened. Some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. I kept the house. Scarlett had left it to me directly outside the trust. Sometimes I walk through the rooms where I once felt so small, so invisible, and I remember what it was like to be powerless. The trust still exists, still bears my name as administrator. I use it for good things now. Scholarships for kids who can't afford college, medical bills for families in crisis, small business loans for people with big dreams and no connections. Brooke sends me Christmas cards every year, updates on her mother's health, pictures of her kids. She's the only one who still calls me family. People ask me sometimes if I regret it. The revenge, the power games, the way I made them suffer. The truth is more complicated than they want to hear. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that they pushed me to become someone capable of such calculated cruelty. I regret that love wasn't enough to save my marriage or my place in their family. But I don't regret making them face the consequences of their actions. I don't regret showing them what it feels like to be powerless, to have your future decided by someone who doesn't care about you. And I don't regret walking away from all of it with my dignity intact. The Holland family empire is in my hands now, and for the first time in my adult life, I don't owe anyone an explanation for what I choose to do with it. That, more than any revenge, feels like victory.